580 Sports Talk going up on a Tuesday. Brendan Dworzinski, Dan Lucero here with you from 3 until 6 on 580 Sports Talk. We've got a busy show coming your way here on the Sports Voice of Kansas. Thank you so much for being a part of the program with us today. We've got more fallout from Super Bowl 57 to get to. There's still plenty we didn't get to yesterday that we will address coming up over the course of the show today. We'll talk a little bit about Andy Reid, and we spoke about his place in NFL history yesterday with Matt Verderam, and he gave us his thoughts about where he ranks on the Mount Rushmore, if you will, of all-time great NFL coaches. Well, we'll break down where we think Andy Reid belongs in that discussion coming up here to lead off the show in just a matter of moments. Also, this hour, we will play some Random Question Tuesday and, again, get to some of what else is going on around the world of, or around the reaction to Super Bowl 57 over the last 48 hours or so. Also, we've got plenty of college basketball to talk about today. Both KU and K-State are in action. They're both at 8 o'clock. Why? Why would you think that was a good idea when they put the Big 12 schedule together to put those two teams at the same time?
I know we don't appreciate it.
No! Who would? Is anyone else playing tonight, or is it just those two? Why would you line them up with each other? Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
Just these two games in the Big 12 tonight. Yeah, you put them right across from each other.
Even at 7 and 8, I mean, 6 and 8 would be ideal. Man, like, if you're Oklahoma, I would think, no, play this game at like 4 in the afternoon. Get this over as soon as possible, because if we lose again, it's going to get even worse.
And it's not just like, oh, Kansans can't watch both of the state schools. Oklahomans can't either.
Right.
Like our neighbors to the south are complaining about the same thing, I bet.
No, this is the franchise OKC right now is probably having this exact same discussion right this second.
The guy Jim Traber, yelling about the same things that we are.
So Jim Traber. So we'll talk about those games coming up a little bit later on. K-State versus Oklahoma. K-State trying to avoid a second straight upset loss to one of the two worst teams in the conference. KU, meanwhile, gets to play at America's favorite wrestling gymnasium. That's right. They're going to get the 215-pounders off the mats for a couple hours and let KU and Oklahoma State basketball play. That dump of a gymnasium. God, I hate that place. They get better camera angles at the Washburn Rural Activity Center. Unbelievably bad. Just terrible viewing experience. I don't even dislike Oklahoma State. I actually like Mike Boynton quite a bit. I like their team quite a bit. Their arena, though, trash. Put it in the dumpster. We'll talk about both those games coming up a little bit later on in the show. Plus, we will preview the KU game with Michael Swain of Fog.net for our Jayhawk Weekly, brought to you by 23rd Street Brewery. That is coming up during the bottom of the 4 o'clock hour. We've got headlines. We've got Random Question Tuesday. We've, of course, got What Is Wrong With You. All of it is coming up here on 580 Sports Talk between now and 6 o'clock. And you know the drill by now. We would love for you to be a part of the show as well. Hit us up on the Big O Tires text line. 785-272-9429 is that text line number. And you can jump into the YouTube comment section as well. Sports on 580 WIBW is the YouTube channel. Stop by, subscribe, go check out our Chiefs recap from right after Super Bowl 57. It's up on the YouTube right now. And our website, 580WIBW.com, is where tonight you can find recaps of both KU versus Oklahoma State and K-State versus Oklahoma. Let's get to the football. Let's get to the Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. By the by, before we get to Andy Reid specifically, because that is where I want to start today. Did you see Juju Smith-Schuster's tweet that has since gone viral over the last couple hours?
Yes.
It is Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day to you and yours. Or if you think it's just a big money-making scheme made up by the big card companies, well, you're probably right.
Happy Valentine's Day anyway, even if you do think that.
Yeah. Hi, honey. Happy Valentine's Day. Juju decided to share a Valentine on his Twitter. And it's a picture of James Bradbury. And the card simply says, "I'll hold you when it matters most."
Very nice thought.
Yeah, that's very kind. How nice.
Man.
He didn't need to do that to him. I'm sure he's feeling bad enough. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. I did want to talk about Andy Reid, though. And Andy Reid's place among the all-time greats in NFL history. We're at a point, like with Patrick Mahomes, that Andy Reid is his bona fides are bona fide. There is nothing more you can say to discredit him as a coach. There's no, yeah, but that time management has cost him. Nope, won 2 Super Bowls, been to 3 of them, or 4 of them now, actually. Yeah, but he didn't win a bunch. He went to a bunch of NFC championship games, didn't make it there. Nope, does not matter. 2 Super Bowls at this point. He's coached up maybe the greatest quarterback of all time, certainly the greatest quarterback in the NFL right now. They keep winning. They keep finding success. There's no way to tear down the accomplishments of Andy Reid at this point, who, by the way, is in the top 5 all-time in regular season wins and overall wins. He's number 2 all-time in NFL history in postseason wins, only behind Bill Belichick. He is truly great in terms of the credentials, and we talk about the eye test versus analytics and numbers and all of that. I mean, it's the same thing coaching-wise, right? I mean, watch a Chiefs game. Go back and watch the second half of the Super Bowl. It was a clinic. It was just a masterpiece. I actually spoke about this with Jake and Fulton doing crosstalk on Mic'd Up today, and Jake asked me, was this really the manifestation of all of our talk about the Eagles not having faced anyone all year? And I said, no, I don't think that was the case. I think the case was the Chiefs are just better than everybody else. Like if they had played the Bengals, if the Eagles had played the Bengals in the Super Bowl, Bengals would have been the best offense they had faced all year long. And maybe the Bengals still win that matchup. But I don't think you see the absolute masterpiece in terms of play calling, play sequencing, play designing that you saw in this actual real Super Bowl between the Chiefs and the Eagles if it was the Bills or if it was the Bengals or someone else who would have taken on the Philadelphia team. I think that is a credit to Andy Reid, to his game plan, to the assistant coaching group he has put together and their work as well. And I think that, you know, with the 2 Super Bowls, not only do you become untouchable, but there's the inherent need for sports fans and consumers to say, okay, well, where does he rank? What is the ranking now? We talked about that with the NBA the other day with Jordan and LeBron when LeBron broke the all-time scoring record. And that's like the entire basis of all NBA debate and discussion at this point in time. Football, it is very similar, position by position at the very least. And I don't know if I'm comfortable saying, well, I put him directly above Don Shula, but he's still 1 spot behind Bill Belichick because of all the titles. But if you wanted to argue Vince Lombardi, one's more of an innovator, I don't know if I want to do that. But if you don't have Andy Reid in your top 5 coaches of all time at this point, I need to hear a pretty damn strong argument as to why, because I think he's worked his way into that position without a doubt.
Yeah, we talked to Matt Verderam about this yesterday here on 580 Sports Talk, and he said, yeah, you're not going to put Andy Reid above Bill Belichick, and you're not going to put him above the guy whose name is literally on the trophy, Vince Lombardi. But anybody after those two, like if you wanted to make an argument that Andy Reid is the 3rd best coach in the history of the National Football League, like I don't know if I would agree, but I would listen to your argument. He now has tied Hank Stram for the most wins by a head coach, regular season and postseason combined, in Kansas City Chiefs history. So the next game he wins as Chiefs head coach, he's going to have the Chiefs record solo, which means he will have the solo record for the most wins as a head coach in the history of 2 different franchises. Like, he had a great, arguably Hall of Fame coaching career with the Eagles, and now he's had, if you split it in half, he's had another Hall of Fame head coaching career, an undeniable Hall of Fame coaching career with the Chiefs. How many coaches get 2 Hall of Fame careers, have a portion of their career, and it's neatly bifurcated for Reid because there was the departure from one team, then he ends up in another place. But how many coaches can you look at and say there was a first act that was a Hall of Fame act and there was a second act that was a Hall of Fame act? Like, it's basically just Belichick, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. There really is.
Like, Bill Parcells didn't get that. Parcells was great early. The second act didn't go so well.
Yeah, fine.
Jimmy Johnson, Hall of Fame coach in his first act. His second act didn't really add to the legend.
No.
A lot of the great coaches in the past, they maybe they didn't get the second act. Like Don Shula hung around forever, but he was done winning titles in the 70s. I mean, Chuck Noll was done winning titles in the 70s.
The best comparison is a college coach, right?
Yeah, I think
it's Nick Saban.
Yeah.
But that's
Like,
we know that's a completely different game. That's
Right.
a completely different business. I'm not really sure that there is any other comparison.
Yeah, like how many coaches had 2 Hall of Fame careers where they were in one era of the game or one decade of the game, consistently going deep into the playoffs, consistently winning their division, consistently winning double-digit games a season, reaching the Super Bowl, and then in another era, in another decade, doing it all over again, and in fact, doing it better. How many coaches, if they did get second acts, how many of the second acts were better than the first? Like that's where it really gets rare. Like,
again, Belichick.
Yeah, like you look at the all-time greats, they had their time. Like Don Shula had his time with the undefeated Dolphins, and they won the titles in the 70s. And then he hung around forever. But other than 83, Marino's rookie year, they never really got close again.
Well, the big thing is the ability to evolve, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to draw a parallel here to the head coach of my favorite college basketball team, but that's what we've talked about with Bill Self, right? Over the last couple of years, that he was always high-low, 2 bigs. That's how we want to play it. And that was how it was for years and years and years and years. KU has been maybe the best team in college basketball, or one of the 3 best teams in all of college basketball over the past half a decade, because he's changed. He's been willing to change and be something different, be something new. In Andy Reid's case, yeah, there are still some tenets of Andy Reid's career that are the same. He does not like to run the ball. The running backs he does like are guys that can do a bunch of different things and are tough as hell. Like Isaiah Pacheco and Brian Westbrook are not the same player, obviously, but you can see why Andy Reid liked guys like that. There are certain things about his career that have been the same, but he's been willing to evolve and change and take things from the past and use them from the future and break off things from the past and change for the future and for the present to make things work. Most guys are not, maybe not even willing, but they're not able to do that. The game passes them by at some point. You know what a great example that is, who's currently coaching, is Mike McCarthy. There was a time in the late aughts, early 2010. So we're talking, really his 07 through probably about 2012 or so, where he was one of the best offensive minds in the NFL. Like, we can joke, and I can joke as much as I want about Aaron Rodgers carried him to a Super Bowl, and granted, that was one of the best playoff runs of all time, but Mike McCarthy was a big part of that. He drew up the offense, then it was Rodgers to go make it work. He has not ever evolved. He can tell you he evolved, but all he did was buy a PFF subscription, and that's about it. Like, he has not, and the game has, to a large degree, passed him by. Andy Reid has avoided that. And that is maybe the most impressive thing about it all. Is that he continues to change and it continues to work. He was winning divisions and going to NFC championship games 2 decades ago with Donovan McNabb. And now he's still doing it. He's not, to your point, to bring it all to your original point, it's working better now.
Yeah, because he's still on the cutting edge, exactly as you put it. You know, he's still on the cutting edge of innovation. He continues to surround himself with great assistant coaches who then go on to be successful head coaches. Like, you want to compare, like, again, I think Bill Belichick is the greatest NFL coach of all time. I also think that when you look at Bill Belichick's coaching tree and you look at Andy Reid's coaching tree, there is no comparison when it comes to the fruits that those respective coaching trees have borne. Reid's got coaches who've gone on to win Super Bowls. Bill Belichick's coaching tree is full of guys who get fired after 2 years. Like, there's a reason for that. He continues to hire and tutor successful people. And that's another credit to his legacy. We talked about it yesterday. The thing that stands as the ultimate credit to Reid is how much his players love him throughout his time as a head coach, from Philadelphia all the way through. Shady McCoy still loves the guy. Yeah. And things did not end great for Shady in Kansas City.
No.
There at the very end.
In fact, if I remember correctly, he did not exactly say a bunch of nice things about Andy Reid on his way out.
During Super Bowl week, he's had a little bit of time to, let the frost thaw a little bit and says great things about the kind of coach that Andy Reid is. So, yeah, that's the thing that I think separates Andy when you talk about him as one of the all-time greats, is the fact that it's never felt like things have passed him by. And if anything, it has felt like he has been able to change with the times. The game passed Tom Landry by. In the 1980s, his teams stopped winning, and they went 1-15 in his last season. The game passed Chuck Noll by. The Steelers were not a force in the 80s by the time he chose to pass the baton to Bill Cowher. Don Shula's Dolphins teams, they were as great as Dan Marino could possibly make them, but that was about it, right? Like, I think after, I want to say they only made one other conference championship game after 83. It was against the Bills. I think they lost 51-3. Am I making that up? I know the Bills beat somebody in an AFC title game 51-3.
I'm going to check for you here.
I think it was Miami.
So let's go take a look at the Dolphins' history after 83. Their worst playoff loss with Marino was Marino's final game.
Yeah, his final game. They lost 62-7 to Jacksonville.
Yeah, not 55-3 though. That must have been another team that you're thinking of.
That might have been Oakland, or they would have been Los Angeles at the time.
But yeah, I mean, after they went to the Super Bowl in 1984, Don Shula won a grand total of 4 more playoff games, and he coached for another 11 years. And that he's legitimately one of the best of all time, but it's hard to keep that going and to keep that up and to be able to do that with any form of consistency.
Yeah. And again, like if you're comparing him with Don Shula, if you're comparing him with Tom Landry, if you're comparing him to Chuck Noll, like that's the company that he keeps. That is the company that he stands alongside when you talk about the coaches who are in the Hall of Fame. If there's, Deion Sanders says there needs to be an upper room for the elite of the elite. Like if there's a coach's upper room, Andy Reid's got to go. Andy Reid's got to be part of that now because of his ability to succeed. 2 different stops. And it's not just that he succeeded. He succeeded in places that were not succeeding when he arrived, which is generally how it works when you're a new coach, right? Like you don't usually step into shoes that are not hard to fill. You don't usually take over a job that's in great shape.
No.
Unless like a legend retires at the top of his game. Like Mike Tomlin took over the Steelers in pretty good shape from Bill Cowher. But that's the exception, not the rule. He took over in Philadelphia. Philadelphia was 10 years removed from, the days weren't that glorious because they never got to a Super Bowl under like Buddy Ryan, Ray Rhodes, anybody like that. The 90s were an up and down decade for the Eagles. He turned them into the NFC team of the early part of the 2000s. We don't need to go over where the Chiefs were, the hell that they endured in that season before they hired Andy Reid. Look where they are now. We went through the list yesterday of the teams now that have as many or more Super Bowls than the Chiefs. It's an ever-shrinking list. Like, this is what the Chiefs have become now. And Andy Reid is responsible for that. So for him to claim that and to claim to be the winningest coach in the history of 2 different franchises while he's still active, it's upper echelon stuff for me. For me, he's easily a top 5 NFL head coach of all time. Like I said, if you want to argue him as high as number 3, I would listen.
I'm with you on that. I would absolutely listen to that argument. I do not think there is an argument for outside the top 5 at this point, and I think you certainly can argue for inside the top 3. The other thing I want to bring up, too, just in regards to the greatness of Andy Reid, during the game, my wife said to me, they keep talking about Nick Sirianni and how much people love to play for him and he empowers these players and all that. He looks like he'd be awful to work for. Like all the up and down and the yelling and the performative stuff and how emotional he gets on the sideline, just kind of the way he carries himself. You know what people genuinely love to play for? Andy Reid. Like that is another key to the success because when you're a head coach, this is why I think the whole CEO head coach versus play caller coach thing is kind of overblown. Because Andy Reid's got to do the quote-unquote CEO stuff, too. Like, he has to handle personalities all the time. There's a lot of them on this Chiefs team, okay? Like, Travis Kelce has calmed it down a little bit as he's gotten older. Still a lot of personality. Chris Jones, Frank Clark. All these dudes have tons of personality, and that's just scratching the surface of it. But it all works, and it pretty much always has all worked. Most Philadelphia teams were winning a bunch of games despite having some real flamboyant personalities, too. They went to a Super Bowl with T.O., who is an all-time great, obviously, but also that was a fairly hectic time in Eagles history. Freddie Mitchell is an idiot and just a basket case. They made it work. Andy Reid turned Freddie Mitchell into a serviceable NFL player, and Bill Belichick, maybe the best of all time, has come out and been like, yeah, when we knew we were going to win when we saw 84 on the field. Like, he has come out and said that publicly. He knew that he was the worst player on the field. Like, the fact that he can manage these personalities and take bombastic people and encourage them to be themselves, like I think he's done with Travis Kelce as an example, but still have it work within the framework of the team's success.
Frank Clark's another great example of this.
Yes, absolutely.
Frank Clark's a great example of this. This is a guy, a bit of a checkered past. He got kicked off the team at Michigan for an incident with, I believe, his girlfriend at the time. It was definitely an incident of domestic violence. He got kicked off the team at Michigan. Even in recent memory, I mean, he missed some games this year because he's toting guns around in his car like he's an arms dealer or something. Not making great decisions off the field. This is a guy, Frank Clark, who can be a little bit impetuous, and that might be the nicest way to describe some of his off the field behavior. But Andy Reid, and Clark has spoken openly about this, has gotten the best out of him, has been able to encourage him to try and be better. And Clark has spoken openly about, not just as a football player, but he's maybe want to be a better person. He's maybe want to make better decisions. He maybe want to be a better father, be a better man. And the embrace that those two shared at the end of the AFC Championship game, the clip made its rounds on social media. It was on Inside the NFL. Like, that's a genuine and real affection and appreciation that those two have for each other. And it speaks to his ability to, and again, Clark was one who talked about this. Andy Reid did not have what you would describe as a comfortable upbringing. Like, he grew up in East Los Angeles, and Frank Clark says he knows how to talk to the guys from the hood, for lack of a better way to put it. He knows how to talk to guys who didn't have the best upbringing, but he knows how to deal with the people that he encounters in his locker room. I got to find the quote from Clark because I thought it was really good. And I hope I can find it here before we have to get to a break. But his ability to relate to players 1 through 53 in his locker room, it's really rare to be able to connect with guys the way that Andy Reid does.
It really is special, and it's fun to watch. Like, it is fun to see how they're able to blend all of these players and personalities together to make it work. We've got more Super Bowl to talk about coming up later on this hour. More of the fallout from the Chiefs win. The Eagles lost as well. They're now the first team since 1994 to lose both of their coordinators after losing a Super Bowl. That is honestly somewhat unbelievable. So we'll get to that coming up a little bit later on. We've also got some Random Question Tuesday coming up. We'll look for that quote. We'll get to plenty more 580 Sports Talk coming up after this. Couple things we need to get to here before we play some Random Question Tuesday on 580 Sports Talk. One from the comment section on YouTube from Vance. He says, I wonder how Bears fans feel knowing they could have had Patrick in the 2017 draft. Pat is winning Super Bowls. Mitch is like a pinball searching for a home. In retrospect, this take sounds worse because he is the nasty man. But in reality, given the way that the quarterbacks were viewed by the masses going into 2017, it's probably more egregious that the Bears took Trubisky over Watson than it is Mahomes. If you remember, going into that draft, because that's what, I mean, I followed the draft my whole life, but that's when I really started getting into, like, watching tape and listening to what the analysts are saying about these guys. The consensus was a lot more split on Patrick Mahomes than it was on Deshaun Watson. Trubisky was a bad pick no matter what. Like, that was telegraphed from the beginning. But I think it is more egregious that they missed Watson, given his hype as a prospect, the success he had in college, etc., than Mahomes. Now, in retrospect, obviously Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL. You would have rather had that guy. At the time, I think that was slightly more defensible than the other way around. But again, also in retrospect, Watson is the nasty man, so it's probably good. I would rather have a total bust than that guy too.
Yeah, for sure.
No doubt about that.
And be paying that guy $250 million fully guaranteed.
Right. Also, we've got an update on the Juju Smith-Schuster Valentine's post about James Bradberry. If you're watching on YouTube, we've got the update live on the video right now, in fact. So A.J. Brown decided to comment back about this Juju post. And he said, A.J. Brown, of course, receiver for the Eagles. He says, quote, "First off, congratulations. Y'all deserve it." And then goes on to say, "This is lame. You was on the way out of the league before Mahomes resurrected your career on your one-year deal, TikTok boy. He admitted that he grabbed you, but don't act like you're like that or ever was. But congratulations again." Clapping and confetti and beer emojis.
Call him TikTok boy.
Man, Mahomes rescued your career on a one-year deal, TikTok boy.
TikTok boy is vicious. I can't decide whether that's like a 10 out of 10 burn or like a 2 out of 10. Because it's low effort, but it's also scathing.
That cuts deep.
Yeah.
It's been a while since people have talked about Juju's TikToks.
Yeah. Like, I don't remember that being a topic of discussion all season. I don't think he was out there like, I kind of thought maybe when they signed him that he and like Jackson Mahomes were going to be doing all the dance challenges like every Wednesday at practice. Speaking of people we didn't hear a peep out of for an entire season. Yeah. I hope Jackson Mahomes had a nice time at the Super Bowl.
It sure seemed like he did. He got on camera a little bit at the end. Mm-hmm. He hopped in, had a couple. I
think I saw him before the game down on the field. I saw his wife.
Yes, Abby saw him as well and he pointed him out.
Yeah, he was down there doing all kinds of crumping and other dance. I don't know why I go to crumping as my default. That's not a cool dance.
You could have said anything and I would have said, yes, that trend I'm very much aware of. I'm not on the TikTok. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know any.
I don't have a TikTok either. The Chinese have all the information they're going to get out of me. I'm not going to volunteer any more of them by signing up for TikTok.
I have seen at game, like when we go to high school football games or whatever, I'll get there early and the only people there are students, for example. And I'll be setting up in the press box and look down and I'll see kids doing these dances and filming each other in the crowd. And on one hand, I think, you know what? Who cares? I did stuff that in retrospect is probably dumb as hell when I was in high school. Mm-hmm. Who cares? I'm glad they're having fun. Then I think, what is this? What is happening? I'm not that old. I shouldn't be this out of touch, but I don't get it.
I mean, like life comes at you fast. Like when I was in high school, the phones were just bricks. They didn't have cameras. I didn't have a phone with a camera on it until my freshman year of college. Then, it was that. And then the Harlem Shake happened and now we're here.
The Harlem Shake. Wow.
Remember the Harlem Shake video?
Oh, I do remember the Harlem Shake.
Oh, yeah.
You remember the, what was it? The mannequin challenge a few years later?
Yeah, remember the mannequin challenge? Yeah. Black Beatles by Ray Shremmer? Yeah. Talk about two songs that are propane heaters.
Yeah, the Harlem Shake, if I heard that, I'd probably say, what? And that would be my response. I hear Black Beatles in the club. Oh, yeah. Party time.
One of those songs is going to be our rejoin for the next segment. I'm not going to spoil which one.
I cannot wait to find out. So that's a nice little entryway into Random Question Tuesday for today. Also, we've got another YouTube comment that says, unless you have an ungodly amount of free time, do not get a TikTok. It is a severe time suck. One of my best friends is on it all the time. And he says, oh man, Sometimes I think I'm going to bed at 1 o'clock. I open TikTok and it's all of a sudden 2:30. And I don't think I want that. Like, I mean, I'm up that late anyway, so it doesn't really affect me in that regard.
Right.
But I feel like I don't really want to just sort of have my brain turn off and stare at a screen for an hour. I don't feel like that's really for me. But hey, if that's your thing, enjoy it. I do enjoy when people post Joe Burrow TikToks on Twitter because they're very cringy and very funny.
Yeah, the TikToks that make it over to like my side of Twitter are always very good. So I trust the people I follow to curate TikTok and just bring that experience to Twitter for me.
Yeah, if it's good enough to eventually make it to Twitter or Instagram where I am, clearly it's been filtered through and is genuinely funny.
Exactly.
Then it gets to me. I do have a Super Bowl related random question Tuesday for you. What's the first Super Bowl that you vividly remember watching? Like you can remember any sort of part of the game clearly.
That would be trying to remember the Roman numerals. So I'm going to have to work backwards here. Be 27, the first Cowboys-Bills Super Bowl, the blowout at the Rose Bowl.
Okay.
So this would have been the 92 game. 92?
27, that would have been the 92 season.
Yeah, 92 season, 93 game. Yeah, so I don't have, like, I have a vague recollection of seeing, like, the pregame show for Minnesota, Washington, or the game in Minnesota, Washington, and Buffalo the year before, but I don't remember anything about that Super Bowl. Very unmemorable Super Bowl. Kind of a weird one-off like that. It didn't feel like a one-off at the time because, Washington, they were great in the 80s. Looks like they'll be great in the 90s too, with Mark Rippon forever and always. And they have not, like, they've won like 2 playoff games.
They have not recovered since then.
No, they really haven't. But no, I do remember the next year's Cowboys and the Bills. I remember I was rooting for the Cowboys. I actually remember like being excited to, like, I picked the Cowboys to win and I wanted them to win. And boy, did they. Oh my.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that would be the first one that I have a vivid memory of, would be Super Bowl 27.
First one for me is Super Bowl, I guess that was 30. Must have been 37. 36? It was Patriots Rams.
36 was Patriots.
That was 36. Okay. Yeah. So 37 was on the Bucks and the Raiders. So yeah, Super Bowl 36. I remember the
Wait, no, hold on. I'm trying to think now. 33 was Broncos Falcons. Which would make 34.
No, 32 was Broncos. No, never mind. I'm sorry. You're right.
Yeah, 33. Yeah, 32 is Broncos Packers.
Yeah,
33 is Broncos Falcons. 34 then would have been Rams Titans. 35. Yeah, 36 Patriots.
Okay.
Yeah, you're right.
And I remember I vividly remember the logo for that Super Bowl. It was the American flag in the Roman numerals, and I obviously remember all the, that time of year, the 9/11 imagery from what happened that year. I remember the divisional round very well because the Rams beat the Packers and beat them pretty handily, and I was very upset.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, I hate the Rams. And my mom thought, no, if they win the Super Bowl, like, that means you lost to the best team. And I thought, oh, that's smart. I don't think I feel that way anymore, by the way.
I definitely don't feel
that way anymore. But at the time, I thought, you know what? That actually makes a lot of sense. I will root for the Rams. And then I remember not a lot of details. I remember the introductions to the game, and I remember Vinatieri's field goal. And thought, I am being set up for disappointment. And that's the first one that I can vividly remember any part of the game itself. By the way, I just looked this up. The 2001 Packers, you know who their linebackers coach was?
I don't.
Bo Pelini. Should have known.
Shout out to Bo. Man, I when I worked in Nebraska, those were the Pelini years, so I covered the Pelini teams.
What's he doing these days?
Gosh, no, he was back with LSU for a year, wasn't he?
Yeah, they got canned because their defense was horrendous. That was the year after the greatest team of all time. That was the 2020 LSU team. They were so bad. He is currently listed on Wikipedia as a former American football coach.
Man, I can't believe he's not doing TV.
Everyone can get a TV job. Not that guy. Would not put him on TV.
Not Bo Pelini. A couple answers from the Big O Tires text line from the 785. First one I remember was Pittsburgh-Dallas in the mid-'70s. Not sure which of the matchups. First time my dad let me hang out with him and his friends and watch the game. Also from the 785, being old makes this question easy. Super Bowl I.
There you go. Hey, that's a great
shout out to everybody out there that remembers Super Bowl I.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's been here for all 57. Shout out to any of our listeners who have memories of 1 through 57.
If you have a tape of that game, a full recording of it, you could probably sell it to the NFL for like $3 million.
At least.
At the very least. So if you have that.
All the covers they've ever done of that is just spliced together, right?
I believe they did find a partially, like an almost full copy of it in some dude's attic.
Yeah, like two networks aired it.
Yeah.
If I remember right. Like both CBS and NBC. So two of the big three at the time.
Because one had the AFL and one had the NFL.
And one of the networks like taped over their master recording.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy? Like 1967 was not that long ago.
Mm-hmm.
And yet that kind of thing seems like early days of TV. Like, might need it.
Because it was a way bigger deal in 1967? The World Series.
Yeah.
Those tapes survived.
Yeah, right.
Nobody was taping over those. Cardinals, Red Sox, put those in the vault.
Good job for AFL, NFL championship game number 2 to say, maybe we need these. Might want to keep these around.
Also, shout out to Lamar Hunt thinking, that's kind of a clunky name. What if we called it something else?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Hunt. Do you have a random question for us?
I do. It is Valentine's Day today. I'm not going to ask you to give away the store and spoil anything just in case your spouse is listening. But what have you got cooked up for Valentine's Day?
We are just watching basketball tonight. We're going to go out to dinner tomorrow.
Okay.
I think leftover sandwiches is on the menu tonight. I'm not sure for sure. But we figured, okay, KU and K-State both play, so we both have interest in those games at 8 o'clock. Everything is packed and busy. Let's go on Wednesday when things will not be as busy. So we're doing our Valentine's dinner tomorrow. But this morning, Abby leaves for work. When she has to go into the office, she leaves before I am awake by a couple hours. So, when I woke up, she wasn't there. So I went out and got her a little something. And honey, if you're listening, look at the kitchen table when you walk inside.
See, I got my wife some gifts yesterday, and I set them out after she fell asleep last night. I set them out so that she would see them when she went into work this morning.
Well done.
Because she also, not every morning, but she's usually out of bed before me and has to be out the door before me. So, yep, she saw all of her goodies and was very excited to receive those. But tonight we're going out to dinner too. We're gonna go get some food, and then we're gonna come back and watch basketball.
And watch basketball from there. We're going to take another time out here on 580 Sports Talk. We've got more Super Bowl 57 to get to next here on 580 WIBW. Welcome back to 2012. Brendan Dworzinski and Dan Lucero.
Wow, that really was 2012, 2013, wasn't it?
That's 11 years ago, man.
So long ago.
So it came out over a decade ago.
So, no, I'm going to clock it at 2013, and here's why. So my brother played a year of minor league baseball out of college, and he played in the Independent American Association with the Sioux City Explorers. And in the regular season finale for both teams, neither team was going to play in the playoffs. They did a Harlem Shake video in the fourth inning. They stopped the game and everybody went out to the middle of the field and danced.
The precursor to the Savannah Bananas.
Really?
The song came out in late May of 2012. Going to my sister's 15th birthday. How about that? So yeah, late 12, early 13 is probably when it peaked. I remember doing one in February of 2013 when I was in high school at the radio station.
I never participated in one, but I enjoyed watching them. I was like, wow, this is great. This is internet culture peaking right here.
Remember flash mobs? That was a real big thing for a hot minute.
I do.
Yeah. That, I might not be super in tune with everything that's cool now, but I think things that are cool now are cooler than they were then. That was sort of a social nadir.
It might have been. We got a great question from the Big O Tires text line that I think fits here as we kind of discuss Super Bowl 57, stray thoughts from the Chiefs, 38-35 victory over the Eagles. A question from the 785 on the Big O Tires text line. Had the Bengals played the Eagles in the Super Bowl, how would that have played out? Would they have given the Eagles a game, or would the Eagles have won the Super Bowl if they'd have played against the Bengals?
It's a great question. I'm trying not to cop out here. I sort of feel like that's maybe a 50-50 matchup.
I think that the Eagles would have pushed the Bengals around in a similar vein to how they pushed the Chiefs around. And as much as I like Burrow and that Bengal offense, down 10 in the second half, if they get them in a hole, are they going to come back? Are they going to the Chiefs pitched a perfect game offensively in the second half. They had 230 yards possible to gain and gained 221 of them. And it could have been 230 if McKinnon had gone into the end zone.
Yeah.
Literally, a perfect offense performance in the second half. Would the Bengals have had that in them? Would Zach Taylor? Would Joe Burrow? Would they have all had that? Would that offensive line have had it in them? That's what I don't think.
That last point is the best point, I think. Because I do think Joe Burrow, if anyone in that group would have it in him, I think it's the quarterback. We know he is cool, calm, collected under pressure. I would not worry about him, and I don't think I'd worry about their weapons either. The offensive line, though, is the big concern. Deontay Lee from The Athletic played college football. I really enjoy Deontay Lee. Does some stuff with the Athletics NFL podcast as well. He tweeted out earlier this afternoon. In fact, it was right at the top of the hour, this hour. He said, Super Bowl 57 might have had the best offensive line play on both sides I've ever seen in a game that big. All these clips I'm watching are so clean and well executed up front. Even with the bad turf, which I think negated some of the pass rush for both teams, I do not think the Bengals would have held up as well against that Eagles front. I think that might have been the determining factor. I think the Bengals have the pieces to have made that a game, but I think they would have been in a much bigger hole because of that line.
I don't think they would have blanked the Eagles' defensive line in the sack.
Agreed.
That would not have happened.
No, I'm 100% with you on that. It's sort of funny the way we view close games, because if you look at the first half, the Eagles were certainly a better team in the first half, and the Chiefs really saved their bacon by getting that lucky bounce on the fumble and taking it for the touchdown. But in the second half, the Chiefs were the better team by miles. They were way better than the Eagles were in that second half. It makes me instantly think the number one example of this for me is the SEC championship game must have been 2020 when Georgia was up 2 scores on Alabama and then lost by 2 scores. And that was when Jalen Hurts came back in for Tua.
Yes.
It was that game. And I remember the reaction to it was, man, Georgia's next. They're on the way up. They were so close to beating Alabama. And I thought, no, they weren't. They were not all that close to beating Alabama. They went up 2 touchdowns and they lost by the same margin. They got housed in the second half. In money time, they got destroyed. That's not a close loss. That's an embarrassing loss. I don't feel like this is quite to that same degree, but you need to be better in the second half of games. And maybe that is the point we should have brought up. And it's easy to say this in hindsight, but maybe that's the point we should have brought up when we were talking about how the Eagles hadn't played anybody, is they didn't have any tense second halves. They had, 2 or 3 the entire year where they actually had to do anything in the second half?
No, I think that mattered. I think the way that I phrased it in the lead up was the Chiefs have been playing playoff football, and I don't think the Eagles have had to play playoff football yet.
Yeah.
Like where a game is close for 4 quarters. I think that did do the Eagles a disservice. The fact that they had not met an opponent. They hadn't met many in the regular season. They certainly didn't meet any in the playoffs who was capable of standing in the middle of the ring with them and trading punches for 60 minutes. Now, the 49ers might have been if not for Purdy's injury, but Purdy's injury happened and made that game non-competitive. So I do think that did the Eagles a disservice. The fact that they hadn't tasted their own blood. And the Chiefs, meanwhile, they got activated when they tasted their own blood. Like that was their superpower. That was when they really got going. Was when they were in tight games, when they got behind. I mean, how many times this season did they get behind? Or how many times did they need a crucial drive or a crucial stop? Even against teams we thought, oh, you should have been blowing this team out. Maybe that was good practice. Maybe letting the Broncos and the Texans hang around like that. Maybe that was practice for, like, this is how you need to react. This is the mental acuity you have to have in these close games.
And if nothing else, even if it's not the mental part of the game, you're not, as coaches, prepared for that. What do you call in that situation? If you're Nick Sirianni, what do you dial up in that situation? You don't know because it's never come up. It's never been a relevant point at any point. So maybe that is the part of not playing a tough schedule that really came back to bite the Eagles. They had the players, they had the scheme to beat anybody. Well, maybe not on defense, but they had all of those things ready. How do we win a game in a situation that we've never had to win a game this year? I think that's a very interesting point, and I think you're right about that. If it's a different matchup, I think the offensive line is the big change. That group was incredible for the Chiefs. They really were incredible. You can't give an MVP to multiple players, but outside of Mahomes, that was the most valuable piece for the Chiefs. No doubt about that. Coming up in the 4 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk, we're going to lead things off with a segment I am extremely excited about. We're going to revisit our preseason NFL predictions. Michael Swain will join us, and we'll find today's winner in What Is Wrong With You. We'll get to all that and more coming up next hour right here on 580 Sports Talk. Hour 2 of 580 Sports Talk going up on a Tuesday. Brendan Dworzinski, Dan Lucero joining you on this Valentine's Day 2023. Happy Valentine's Day if that's something you enjoy participating in. And if not, well, happy Tuesday. Eat some chocolate regardless. Coming up here in this 4 o'clock hour, we are going to revisit our thoughts from before the start of the NFL season. We're going all the way back to the first Thursday of the season. That was September 8th. Do you remember who played on September 8th?
Well, the Rams.
Yep.
Oh, they torched whoever they play. Oh, man. They got torched. Man. How do I not remember?
It was the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah.
And the Buffalo Bills won 31-10.
Yeah, they
blew them out.
Blew them out. Yeah, that was like, ooh, something might be wrong with the Rams.
Either one of these teams is really great or the other one is really bad. And, the Bills were pretty good, but, man, the Rams were pretty bad. So we're going to revisit our biggest overall NFL predictions for the year. And we're also going to go back and look at who we picked to make the playoffs, make the Super Bowl, all of that, and do a little bit of year in review. We've got a lot of NFL year in review coming up over the next few days here on 580 Sports Talk. We'll also get to today's What is Wrong with You? The TNT teacher, currently our winner for the week after picking up the victory yesterday.
Word to Vance in the YouTube comments for that one.
Yes, that was a great name. And then we also are going to get to our Jayhawk Weekly, brought to you by 23rd Street Brewery in Lawrence with Michael Swain of fog.net. He is going to join us coming up later on this hour as we preview KU versus Oklahoma State tonight. Bill Self returning to his alma mater, a place where he has had plenty of struggles relatively over the course of his long and illustrious coaching career. Of course, we'll get to your texts and your YouTube comments as well throughout the show. The Big O Tires text line number is 785-272-9429. And you can also jump into the YouTube comment section. Sports on 580 WIBW is the name of our YouTube channel. Let's go back to our predictions, Dan, from the start of the year. September 8th is when we made these, the first Thursday of the regular season. I've got the audio from the first question of the segment. In fact, the 4 o'clock hour, I went back and listened to the whole 4 o'clock hour of this day's show. And the first segment, we did just the Chiefs and the AFC West. Second segment, we did full, just big picture league or Chiefs predictions for the year. Here is your big overarching prediction. I said, what's your biggest NFL storyline or prediction you are going to keep your eye on for this year? This is what Dan had to say. We'll see if he was right or wrong about that. Do you remember what this was?
No, I do not remember.
Love it. So 5 months later, just over 5 months later, let's see if Dan was right about his prediction.
Man, I'm about to sound like one of those ESPN talking heads on Get Up or something like that. I swear I am. But I think we're at the end for Tom Brady.
Okay.
I think we're at the end. I don't think he really wanted to play all that badly this year. And I certainly don't believe he wanted to play in Tampa Bay this year. and that's kind of a matter of public record these days. So I think this is it. I really do. I think this is it for Tom Brady. And history tells you that with very few exceptions, it doesn't end great for quarterbacks, particularly not quarterbacks who get into their 40s.
What a call by Dan Lucero. 100% right.
All right.
That was tremendous. That was right on the money.
Yeah, I nailed that. Like 10 out of 10.
My big prediction was just sort of a bigger version of what yours was. So let's see if I could match up with how correct mine was versus Dan's. Here's my pick. I had to edit this, by the way. That was just the raw audio from the first 43 seconds of Dan's answer. We just discussed it a little more after this. I had to cut mine up because, if you can believe this, I kind of wandered a little bit in what I was saying. So here's my prediction from September 8th. There's a number of quarterbacks around the league who you would say, this might be it. Like, this might be their final chance. Tom Brady, we're just talking about him. It could be all over. A texter says one big hit could end Tom Brady's career. Yes, that's true. He doesn't have a center. As much as I hate to say it, Aaron Rodgers ain't going to be around forever. I mean, in theory, now he's not, because there's way too much money coming his way if he does keep playing for another couple years. But Packers have been in the championship window now for 3 full years. This is either 3 or 4, depending on how you view Matt LaFleur's first year with the team. He's getting older, man. Other names. I don't know if Russell Wilson totally counts here because he's sort of entering another chapter, but he ain't young either.
He's 34, and at least his former employer believes the legs are starting to go.
Another one who we've talked about plenty of times in the last week or so. I'm higher on him than you are. Even I don't think Matt Ryan's got all that much time left. I've been saying I think he's got 1 season left where he can be really good. Well, he clearly was not. He was buns this year.
Yeah, mixed results there with your big prediction.
Yeah, I mean, Rodgers had a major down year and might be retiring. Brady already has retired after a miserable season. I wasn't quite too strong in that Wilson pick, but sort of on the right track. And yeah, Matt Ryan didn't even have 1 season left. He is not retired yet.
Maybe he'll back up Mahomes next year.
Maybe. There are worse options. There are certainly worse options.
Nah, man, he's cooked. He is
Over.
So
he has no arm.
cooked.
The arm is gone.
Yeah.
He never had a great arm, but it's completely shot. Here's one other one. Here's a bonus prediction for you. This one I got perfectly right. I think the offense is going to have a great year. I think Patrick Mahomes is going to be a finalist for MVP this season. And I don't have any reason to trust the other 3 teams. There's no reason to. I think the Chargers are a playoff team. Why should I trust them? My entire life, what reason has there been to trust them? And I was right again. Still no reason to trust the Los Angeles Chargers. That one felt good. I was going through the segment, and I thought, okay, well, this was not a great take. Then we got into the predictions, and I thought, oh, yeah, that's a heater. That one came off real good. All right. Going back to the start of the year, we had very similar predictions in the AFC for the AFC West. We both had the Chiefs at 12-5. You had the Chargers at 10-7. I didn't give a record. I just said they'd make the playoffs. So that's kind of cheating. That's like half credit, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
We both said the Broncos 9-8. You did say they would be the 7 seed. Not quite on that one.
Wow, that was giving a little too much credit.
You had the Raiders at 7-10. I had them at 8-9. But we both picked them to be pretty crappy. So
yes,
that was right.
The order was not quite correct because Raiders did finish 3rd in the division, but Chiefs and Chargers 1 and 2. Yeah.
What was the Raiders' final record?
They win 6?
6-11? Man, that's bleak. That's really stinky. They finished 3rd. Yeah, 6-11. You're right. Yeah, you were closer to the pin on that one, but we were at least right that the Raiders were not going to be good, but still better than how bad the Broncos were. And we were both right on with the Chargers being in the playoffs and the Chiefs winning the division, obviously, although Chiefs even better than that 12-5 mark. In the AFC playoffs, we had very similar picks for all of our teams. You had the Chiefs, Ravens, Colts, and Bills as your division winners. And you said that 9-8 would win the South. It wasn't the Colts, but 9-8 did win the South. I had the Chiefs, Bengals, Colts, and Bills. So I'll take the point on that one. The wild card teams, we both had the Chargers as the wild card. We flipped the Bengals and Ravens, but both made the playoffs. I got the Dolphins in the playoffs. I got that as my last wild card pick. You had the Broncos. That did not pan out.
That's tough.
NFC, a lot of chalk. A lot of chalk in the NFC. We both had the Packers. Wrong. Rams. Wrong. That Rams one was really wrong. At least the Packers were in it till week 18. Oh, my God. Both had the Bucks. Yeah, both had the Eagles, obviously. We had 2 of the same wild cards, too. Vikings and Saints each. Saints, not so much. You had the Cowboys in. I had the 49ers in. And just replaced the Saints, and we would have both been right there. We did a pretty good job, I think, predicting the regular season. That sounds pretty solid.
5 of the 7 playoff teams, I think, or you got 6 out of the 7 in the AFC. But get 5 out of the 7 in the NFC. That's not too shabby.
No, that was a very solid grouping there.
Yeah.
Our conference championship game picks. I, again, did not give a pick for the AFC. I just said the Chiefs were going to win. I apparently didn't care who they were going to end up playing. So, again, half credit, I guess. And I had the Packers over the Rams in the NFC championship game.
Oof.
That's tough. That is a bad one. You had Packers over the Eagles in the NFC championship game.
A little better.
Got one of the competitors. Got
one
of them in there. And you had Chiefs over Bills in the AFC championship game. Makes sense. Also, another prediction you got right. Dan, and I quote, said, the Chiefs defense gets to a level this year that lets them be championship good. That was pretty good.
They did. It took them a while.
I don't know that we had full Super Bowl predictions. I know I picked Packers because I'm an idiot. And
you always do. And I think I picked the Chiefs.
Yeah, I think that's what that quote was indicating, that they had enough juice. You said, though, that the Chiefs and Bills was the real Super Bowl. You also had that take.
Yes, I felt from the beginning that the AFC was so much stronger than the NFC, that whoever won the AFC would win the Super Bowl. I felt very strongly about that in August, and I felt very strongly about that probably at the beginning of January, too. And that's what it ended up being. But yeah, that's man, it's nice to hear me knowing what I was talking about 5 months ago.
I'm pretty impressed by that. Is there anything going back to the start of the year that you can remember? Maybe not that we had documented on the show, but any thought or take you had going into the year that, looking back, was also either a huge hit or alternately, whoops, didn't get that one right. My obvious one is I thought Matt Ryan had something left, and the Colts were awful.
Yeah, that was one where I really strenuously disagreed with you. Yeah. And even still picked the Colts to win the division because I just thought the rest of the division was going to be gross.
Yep.
Yeah, somebody's got to win 9 games. I thought the Jaguars would be better. Didn't think they'd get to where they ended up getting 9 wins, a division title, and a playoff win. But yeah, my Broncos pick was a bit of a misfire, I should say. I think if I could have gone back and changed that pick, if I could pick a moment when I would have done that, it would have been the moment that Peyton and Eli Manning and Shannon Sharp are all screaming at Nathaniel Hackett on the Manning cast to call a timeout or do something, do anything instead of freeze like a lawn gnome as time was ticking down in week 1 against Seattle. That was a bad omen as those things go for the Broncos. A little too much credit I gave to old Russell Wilson.
In fairness, look, the Broncos don't deserve the fairness because they clearly hired Nathaniel Hackett thinking that would mean they could go trade for Aaron Rodgers, and it didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
But from the perspective on the outside of just prognosticating what the Broncos would look like this year, it's hard to know beforehand that these big name pieces that you bring in aren't going to click. Because on paper, while you were on it that the Broncos didn't have great receivers, I mean, I think there's good individual talent, maybe not great individual talent.
I think Jerry Jeudy is an above average, comfortably NFL receiver. And to his credit, as much as he would care about such a thing, he, in the second half of the season, got better in a way that I didn't think he was going to get as an NFL player. I thought maybe the ship had sailed because I thought he was going to be awesome out of college.
I did too.
And I saw him fail to get separation, and his hands weren't trustworthy, and he didn't look like he was being a good teammate. In the second half, he put some things together. In the last couple of games, he looked like the downfield threat that Russell Wilson was starving for. So I'll give Jerry Jeudy credit. And I know they lost Tim Patrick, but he's coming off an ACL. What are you going to get out of him?
Right.
Because what they've gotten out of Cortland Sutton 3 years removed now from an ACL is he's just a guy.
Disappointing. He was so good.
Oh, he was awesome. He was awesome. Unfortunately, he's just a guy now. Yeah. And then, beyond that, like KJ Hamler may not actually exist.
No, he's a nobody.
Be a figment of everybody's imagination. So, yeah, they didn't have the weapons there, and their offensive line wasn't any good, and their coach was a dunce. And when you added all those things together, and the fact that Javonte Williams got hurt, blew out his knee in week 4 or 5, obviously didn't help matters either. But that's where it's really fascinating to look back and see, okay, I thought this team was going to be good, and they weren't. Well, what did I miss? Like with the Packers, we both thought they were going to win the NFC. I think that was an entirely rational thing to think.
For sure.
Coming into this season, they had been 1 game away from the Super Bowl. Aaron Rodgers was coming off of an MVP season.
2 straight MVPs.
They had a really good running game, and it had established, I thought, a pretty good defense. You're closer to that situation than I am. Watched them probably with a more critical eye than even I did this year. What did go wrong there? Why did they end up, if you had to pinpoint the one reason they went from our preseason NFL pick to 8-9, what was it?
Their roster building strategy has a very high ceiling. They like to draft and develop. That is what they like to do. It is very much the opposite of the Rams, where we're going to trade all of our picks and just go get established players and go for broke and try to win the big one right now. And that worked for them, and I respect it. And for the Packers, that has worked before as well. Not that they never sign free agents, but they want to build it all from the ground up. So when they traded Devontae Adams, that meant a lot of pressure falls on young guys. and they took a while to come along. And both Watson and Dobbs, the rookie receivers, dealt with injury problems. Aaron Rodgers just wasn't as good when he was 39 as when he was 38 and 37. I mean, he's old. That happens sometimes. I think he had some personal issues with some of the play calling. I think he had gotten a little bit too confident in what was going on. I think some of the staffing changes hurt. Like, Nathaniel Hackett is a dope, but it worked really well. You know, the pieces just happened to fit in Green Bay. The other thing is the defense just didn't get better. And the defense played really well for 4 weeks late in the year because they got an absurd number of interceptions. And every week when they didn't win the turnover battle, the defense was bottom 5 in the NFL. And at some point when your strategy is we're just going to keep running it back the way it is, and we're just going to assume that our system means guys will keep getting better, that's great when it works. And the previous 2 years, it had worked. And you also had the best quarterback in the league based on the MVP award and the best wide receiver in the league. Suddenly you didn't have a number one receiver. Suddenly your old grouchy quarterback was a little bit too weird for his own good. And you didn't have that step up for the rest of the roster. So when it works, it's great. When it doesn't, you've got a really, really low floor. And I think that's pretty much what did them in.
So that's what we missed on the Packers. What we missed on the Rams is a lot easier to identify. Their players aged in dog years, and they all got hurt.
Yeah.
That's what happened there.
Losing, I mean, you lose your quarterback. That obviously is a disaster. But
Cooper Kupp was the first one that went out, right?
Yeah.
Like that was, I mean, it was readily apparent, I think, in that week 1 loss that it was Cooper Kupp or it was nobody on that offense. They didn't have, like, Allen Robinson never fit in. They didn't have anybody else. It was Cooper Kupp or it was nobody. And I'll give Cam Akers credit. He really came on in the second half as he got further removed from, who knew, the further away you get from a Achilles injury, the more you get a little bit of a burst back and start to look like your old self. But they didn't have any viable offensive weapons, and the one they did have got hurt, and then Aaron Donald got hurt, and that was curtains for the defense. And yeah, it's easy to see where that one went wrong. But everybody else, I mean, we kind of had a handle, it feels like, on who the good teams were going to be.
I think we did a pretty good job of predicting it, to be completely honest with you. I think most sports talk shows or talking heads would not get nearly this close.
I'm sitting here with 10 of the 14 playoff teams right. Two of the 4 conference championship participants right, and the Super Bowl champ right. I feel pretty good about that.
Yeah, that's pretty darn good.
I take that.
I'm extremely proud of that Chargers take. But also, it was an extremely easy take, and anyone who didn't feel that way was a dope. The only bad thing about it is that now Emmanuel Acho agrees with me, and I want to change my opinion.
Oh, that's tough.
I hate that guy so much. Well, I don't hate him. I don't know him, but I hate everything he does on TV.
Can we update the ongoing breaking news today about an outbreak of Twitter fingers?
Yes.
From the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yes, please.
We've got another violent case of Twitter fingers. This one coming from CJ Gardner-Johnson, who you may have noticed when he gave Isaiah Pacheco a pretty good shot there in the fourth quarter, and then never again.
He didn't do anything the whole game.
Yes. So CJ Gardner-Johnson on Twitter, the Eagles have not been happy with Juju's bit of trolling of James Bradberry. If you missed that earlier, he posted a Valentine on Twitter. It is a picture of James Bradberry that says, "I'll hold you when it matters most," which is objectively funny.
That is very funny.
It's mean. It's a little unnecessary, but it is also funny. Sometimes mean things can be funny. Anyhow, CJ Gardner-Johnson has been tweeting his way through it. His first response was a quote tweet, "Schoolboy's acting gangsta." He went on to say, "Juju ran for me when I check him in game." 3 yawning emojis. Then 10 got his smoke. Vomit emoji. He's referring to the hit he put on Isaiah Pacheco, number 10 for the Chiefs. It goes on. I got more INTs than bruh had TDs. Maybe I need to change to wide receiver. Relief emoji, crying emoji. Then we had him also say, "Juju talk a lot for a guy who ain't productive. For real, FRFR. AB made you look amazing. After that, you've been toilet water. Wait, let me put @ stamp on it. @ Team Juju, prayer hands emoji."
All right.
Did they talk about how the 49ers were going out sad, and now the Eagles are going out sad?
Yeah, that is extremely sad. All right, a couple things. One, that's just word salad. Like that you too much dip on the chip there. You got to keep it to 1 or 2 insults.
Yes. TikTok boy was beautiful in its simplicity.
Calling someone toilet water, though, is so disrespectful and so funny. That is extremely funny. Also, yeah, I mean, Juju only had 3 touchdowns, 933 yards in 16 games. It's pretty good.
Mm-hmm. You know what else he has? C.J. Gardner-Johnson didn't get this year? A Super Bowl ring.
Yeah.
So, I would stop talking if it were me. I would enjoy my postseason vacation and get off the tweets, because no good is going to come from me trying to talk trash to the team is beat me because I couldn't stop them for the life of me in the second half.
Yeah.
I don't know. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, maybe, if you didn't want Juju Smith-Schuster to get off these jokes, maybe get a second half stop. Just one. All they needed was one, and they couldn't get it.
I really didn't know that C.J. Gardner-Johnson was playing until that hit on Pacheco late in the game.
Yeah,
I had
right.
no idea he was even in the game.
Right. And hey, you look, great hit, and then he saved a touchdown on a 3rd and 1 later in the game. Made a great open field tackle on Pacheco. He's a good player. We know he likes to talk. He's kind of known for being a bit of an instigator on the field. He should have instigated a stop.
I mean, that's the thing about football, though, right? You can have a good game, but you still lose because it's the ultimate team sport. Like, sorry, man. Congrats on the individually strong game. Your team did not do enough, and now you have to eat the jokes.
Yes. The true fact of the matter is that everybody goes out sad unless you win.
Yeah, that's
you either win or you go out sad. And the way you can go out the least sad is just set your phone down.
Yeah, that's certainly true. We've got to take a timeout. We'll come back. We've got today's What Is Wrong With You. Michael Swain will also join us later this hour on 580 Sports Talk. Let's find a daily winner in What Is Wrong With You here on 580 Sports Talk. Our reigning champion, the TNT teacher, a 40-year-old teacher in Michigan who wanted a day off of work, didn't want to make sub plans or anything like that, so he left a bomb threat on his desk. Just wrote his own, all handwritten, "The school will blow up tomorrow," left it on his desk. And just apparently waited for someone to come in and find it and just assumed, yeah, they'll take a look at it. We'll be fine. Not sure how logically sound that is, but it ended up working, except for the fact that now he's going to jail for a year. 2 news stories today. Dan, why don't you go first?
We are going across the pond. We are going to Germany, and we meet Marco Gecki, a ballet director. He's been the director at the Hanover Theater since 2019, and a well-regarded one at that. Last year, he won the prestigious German Dance Prize. But no matter how great we may be, we are not immune to the occasional bad review. And Gecki got a bad review of one of his recent shows from a woman named Wiebke Huster. She said she had been, quote, alternately driven mad and killed by boredom during one of his shows. Which that's a bar.
Roasted. Get wrecked.
So when Huster attended another one of his performances, he stormed up to her at the halftime interval and subjected her to a tirade of abuse. He claimed that after Huster had called the show boring and disjointed, dozens of theatergoers had canceled their membership subscriptions. He also threatened to ban her from the Opera House.
Oh.
Now, Gecki has a pet dachshund named Gustav. What a great name.
Great dog name.
Awesome name for a dog. And he's almost a celebrity in his own right, accompanying the flamboyant director to red carpet premieres and galas. Well, Gustav, earlier in the night, had nature call, and Gecki, being a responsible dog owner, scooped up the Gustav's leavings, in a plastic bag. And so he had it on hand when he had this confrontation with Huster, and Gecki pulled the bag out of his pocket and smeared dog poop on this woman's face.
Oh, my God, that's revolting. Ugh.
I can assure you that it was not an impulsive act, Huster told the BBC. He had planned this. I consider it an act against the freedom of the press. Hanover State Opera has suspended Gecki, saying his impulsive reaction went against its rules of conduct.
That's disgusting. That is so gross.
It's really gnarly, isn't it?
Ugh.
Like, you're never going to have 100% approval rating. Like, nobody in this world has 100% approval rating except, like, Vince Scully and Alex Trebek, and neither of them are with us anymore. God rest their souls. But they had 100% approval rating. Like, sometimes you're going to hear from people who don't like your work. Like, as part of doing things that exist in the public sphere, they exist and can be criticized. And sometimes you're going to get some criticism. Now, that was pretty harsh criticism.
Yeah.
I mean, Huster didn't have to do him like that. Talk about being killed by boredom. That's kind of harsh.
Yeah.
But I don't think it warrants the weaponizing of dog crap. So
that's filthy and disgusting, and I hate it. Yeah. Gross.
I'd rather be killed by boredom, literally killed by boredom, than have dog poop rubbed in my face.
No kidding. Let's go to Boca for our next story today, where a man is behind bars after he shot his friend. Hey, that's not good. This story has just come to light, although it did happen back in October. Officers with the Boca Raton Police Department received a call from Albert Medina, who, according to police, was frantically requesting an ambulance. During the call, Medina kept telling police he didn't know there was a bullet in the gun and that the shooting was an accident. Well, what shooting were they talking about? According to an arrest affidavit, when police arrived, the 22-year-old male victim was lying on the living room couch with a belt around his arm in a makeshift tourniquet. He was then taken to Del Rey Medical Center. The victim told police that Medina asked him to get something from the car. When the victim refused, Medina got his gun and, as a joke, pointed it at the victim and pulled the trigger. The victim thought the gun would be empty, the way it had been when the two joked about this in the past. In fact, according to the victim, this has happened at least 10 times. And every time it had just been a joke. And it had been an empty gun. This time, though, there was not an empty gun. It was, in fact, loaded.
Oh.
And Medina ended up shooting his friend. Medina also said he did not know the gun was loaded. He was arrested and charged with culpable negligence that inflicted harm. Sounds accurate.
Yeah. He inflicted some harm, all right. Don't play with guns.
Yeah, why is that your joke? You know, like, why are you saying, wouldn't it be funny if I threatened to kill you? Well, no, not really. I don't find that funny at all.
Yeah, don't wave a gun around at me and think it's a joke. Not funny games.
So, yeah, shot his friend. Didn't know his own gun was loaded, and he shot his friend. Who's your winner today?
The guy smeared dog poop in a woman's face. It's hard to beat that.
That's, God, Like, yes, that is a great winner, but it is also gross.
Yeah, I'm happy with that being one of those that, like, we acknowledge it wins the day. We acknowledge that that's a big time what is wrong with you. But the TNT teacher is a more fun story.
Much more fun. Much more fun. Oh, God, the thought of dog poop on my face is just gross. Ugh, I don't like it. Not one bit.
The German poopered, says a texter from the 615 on the Big O Tires text line.
Oh, that's gross. But the TNT teacher, that is going to get our win for today. It remains our weekly champion in What Is Wrong With You. Let's take a time out before we're joined by Michael Swain of Fog.net for Jayhawk Weekly here on 580 Sports Talk. It's time for Jayhawk Weekly on 580 Sports Talk, brought to you by our good friends at the 23rd Street Brewery in Lawrence. If you're looking for somewhere to go watch the KU game tonight, maybe a little Valentine's Day evening dinner before the game as well, head over to the 23rd Street Brewery in Lawrence at the corner of 23rd Street and Castle. Great food, great beers, great place to hang out and watch a game. That is the 23rd Street Brewery in Lawrence. And we welcome in our good friend, Michael Swain from Fog.net. Fog.net's part of the 24/7 Sports Network. That's where you can find all the best coverage of all things Kansas Jayhawks. And you can find Michael on Twitter as well, at mswain247. Michael, how was your Super Bowl Sunday this weekend?
Good. I thoroughly enjoyed that game. Probably one of the most fun Super Bowls I've ever watched. So I can't complain. It was a good Super Bowl Sunday, and hopefully going to be a good week of sports as well.
Yeah, big night for KU tonight, obviously, and a big weekend as well. And let's start there, looking back on Saturday for KU, Michael. And it was a pretty hideous start to the game offensively for both teams. Not exactly anything to write home about, but once KU got going with that run at about the 7 or 6 minute mark of that first half, KU looked as good as it has looked, I mean, pretty much all year. Jalen Wilson was great. Ernest Uday was huge. And we'll get to some of these individual performances in a moment. But does it feel to you, Michael, like KU is maybe starting to put together a little run that is going to get a little more national attention on just how well the Jayhawks are playing?
I think so. And I think it's probably, Bill Self's dream, a team that relied on jump shooting and 3-point shooting a lot early in conference play, has shot 23s combined over the last 2 games. And I think that's probably the biggest change you've seen and probably why KU's playing at such a high level right now. They've been so selective with their 3-point shooting. And I think that the pick and roll game for them has really started to unlock a little bit, where I think for a while teams packed it in, really tried to make KU shoot threes. And I think they've just been really creative with the way they've used Grady Dick, even if he hasn't gone crazy from 3 yet. You look at Oklahoma and the way they played, where they even had Grady setting screens sometimes, where then he's on the perimeter and then you have Ernest crashing to the rim. And it just creates so much confusion. And as a team now, you mentioned the run they went on. Well, they shot 70% from the field after that torrid start. I mean, that's impressive against any Big 12 team to do that. So I think there's a team now that is starting to find its identity, and you look at the 2-point numbers, and this is a team that has a lot of guys that you think, okay, Jalen Wilson going to the rim, feel pretty good about that. You feel pretty good about Juwan Harrison, Kevin McCullough driving it as well. And with someone like Grady Dick on the perimeter, you feel overall like, okay, this team is really starting to find its identity, and that's a perfect time.
KU's now won 4 of their last 5 games ever since that 3-game losing skid in conference play, and 3 of their last 4 in Big 12 play. And getting more production off the bench over the last week has been huge for this KU team. And I think it's fair to say, Michael, that KU doesn't need all Big 12 caliber play out of its lead bench guys, but to get at least a few minutes where you can put a couple baskets in, you can play competent defense, and at least give some, time for a breather for Jalen Wilson, DeJuan Harris, etc. That's what this KU team needs. But Ernest Udeh has gone above and beyond in these last couple of games. He's been one of the best Jayhawks on the floor on both ends as of late, especially on the defensive side. Where has this come from Ernest Udeh? Because early in the year, it looked like, okay, there's something there, but it's still probably a ways off. Then he almost completely fell out of the rotation for a while. Now he's out there giving KU absolutely massive minutes off the bench. Where did this come from for the freshman Udeh?
Well, I think so much of it is mental. And if you listen to Bill Self talk after the Oklahoma game, he seemed to insinuate that. He mentioned the fact that Udeh is a goofy guy. And if you follow him on social media or you know anything about his personality off the floor, yeah, he is a goofy guy. Like, Grady Dick gets a lot of attention for being like that. I'd argue that Udeh might even be a step further if you want to go on a goofy scale. And that's all fun, right? That's great. It's good to have a good personality. It makes being in the locker room with these guys fun. But you need to be able to kind of flip a switch. And I think that's what you've seen happen, where I think early in the season, adapting to college basketball, it's not only on the floor, but it's also your preparation for a game and what you have to do to be ready to take the floor. And early in the season, he was the guy that was getting the minutes. But I think you saw that the game was probably a little too fast for him. I think against Duke, you saw some of those plays where he felt like he had to go make a play. And I think right now what you're seeing is a guy that has the confidence to let plays come to him. And as a center, I think that's what you need to be. You can't be uber aggressive trying to block every shot that comes in the rim, because then you're going to allow yourself to give up offensive rebounds. And I think that's exactly what Udeh's done. He's picked his spots to really be aggressive and try to block shots and go up for rebounds, but he's also picking his spots too where he decides, all right, I'm just going to block on my man right now, or I'm just going to set a good screen here and roll, and hopefully DeJuan Harris will pass to someone else on the perimeter. I think that growth, just on the mental side of things, has really unlocked the ability and why he was a McDonald's All-American. He's got the talent. He's got the athleticism, the length, the size. You've seen all these things out of a player like Udoka Azubuike before. But, Doak as a senior is not the same player you saw as Doak as a freshman. And that evolution, I think, is what you're going to see with Udeh. And you've just seen a little bit more growth as a freshman where, right, Azubuike got hurt as a freshman, hurt his wrist and was done for the season. Where now, over the course of a year, you've seen a player grow. And I think it's coming on at a perfect time for Kansas where, Zuby Ejiofor was kind of hurt for a little while. He's back now, but now Zach Clemens is hurt and he's probably going to be out still. We'll see. But it's been a perfect, storm in terms of the timing of this for Udeh.
We're talking with Michael Swain of Fog.net and 24/7 Sports. This is Jayhawk Weekly, presented by our friends at 23rd Street Brewery in Lawrence. We do it every Tuesday at this time on 580 Sports Talk, and anytime is a good time to visit 23rd Street Brewery. Enjoy one of their many delicious menu selections, and if you like a cold one, try the Wave the Wheat Ale or the Hadel Hazy IPA, or one of the many other delicious selections they've got on tap for you at the 23rd Street Brewery in Lawrence. Michael, I want to get back to your point about Uday as we were talking about him. It's a little bit ironic in the sense that over the last year and change, when Kansas has played Oklahoma, that's been a Zach Clements game. That's been a Clements matchup where he's been the first big off the bench and gotten to play those reserve center minutes. But with him being out, somebody had to play the backup five behind KJ Adams. For Ernest Uday to be able to do it and handle that matchup and show some adeptness, some quick hands, and some quick feet on the perimeter, how much more confidence does that give KU in feeling like they don't have to go to a smaller lineup or a small ball type of lineup against small ball teams like Oklahoma can be moving forward?
Yeah, I think it helps out a ton. And I think you saw KU switch five during some of those possessions with Uday on the floor. And that's not something a Bill Self team has ever done with a true center out there. Like, how many times do we see Dave McCormick or Doak get burnt on pick and pops because they couldn't move? Like, I don't think that's really a concern with Uday just because he's so fluid athletically. And I think my favorite play from the Oklahoma game was when he blocked the three-point shot at the end of a shot clock. And fun fact, he didn't even get credit for that. If you go back and look at the final stats, like, it doesn't show up as a block shot, which is also incredible. But I think those type of plays that you see maybe show a more, just an evolution of center position that maybe Bill Self is going to look for, where, hey, you can get a guy that can provide that lob threat, can provide a force inside, but also has the athletic ability to move on the perimeter. You know, granted, it wasn't against, a 6-foot speedy guard. It was against a 6'4" combo guard, but still being able to stay in front of him is huge. And I think for Kansas now, you're looking at, it just adds another thing that Bill Self can do. You don't have to always hedge with Ernest Uday on the floor. Maybe you can switch if you see another team that maybe doesn't have super fast guards. So for a coach that does as many adjustments or in-game tweaks, like, that's great for Bill Self now that he knows at times if he needs to, he can do that.
Transitioning into talking about tonight's matchup as Kansas goes to Stillwater to take on Oklahoma State.
At America's favorite wrestling gymnasium.
KU is running into Oklahoma State at a time when the Cowboys are on fire. They've won 5 in a row. They're 7-1 in the league when Musa Cisse plays. And I bring up Cisse because we've been talking about KU's bigs and their center situation. This is an Oklahoma State team that's probably better at rim protection than any team in the Big 12. What is most pivotal tonight for Kansas? Is it their ability to keep them off of the score sheet offensively and protect themselves? Or is it going to be their ability to score on the perimeter, in the mid-range, and not have to be reliant on shots from the interior that might not be there against those big and long interior defenders?
Well, I think it's probably the latter point because, we talked about KU's 2-point shooting as of late and how good they were against Oklahoma and how few threes they've shot. This is a game that's really going to put that growth to the test because, like you mentioned, Oklahoma State has 2 of the better big men in the conference, in Cisse and Boone, and those guys also will kind of start together, but they're not going to play together a ton, and they're always going to have one of them on the floor. So I'm fascinated to see what KU does because they've been so good at driving lately. Are they going to go into this game and try and get ticky-tacky fouls on Cisse and Boone and try and change the complexion of what they can offer, or is this a game where KU maybe reverts back to attempting 20-plus threes in a game? Overall, Oklahoma State's been so good defensively. I think it had the number 8 defense nationally since they started winning this run of 7 wins in 8 games. Defensively is where they've been so great. I think KU, on KU's defensive end, I'm fascinated to see how they do with Bryce Thompson because obviously Bryce had a career night in Lawrence early this year. So I think for me, this is a really fascinating matchup, probably one of the more interesting matchups you've seen with KU over the last week or two, just in terms of what KU has done well as of late is exactly what Oklahoma State does really well at stopping. And I don't think you could say the same thing for Texas and Oklahoma or K-State, Iowa State. It's a very different matchup here for KU and really interesting to see how they approach it.
Couple more minutes with Michael Swain from Fog.net, part of the 24/7 Sports Network. Head over to Fog.net for the best coverage of all things KU. And you can find Michael's work on Twitter as well at mswain247. He joins us here on 580 Sports Talk every Tuesday, bottom of the 4 o'clock hour for our Jayhawk Weekly, brought to you by 23rd Street Brewery in Lawrence. Michael, obviously going into this game with the kind of defense that Oklahoma State plays and with how well they're playing in general, you need the normal staples for success for KU. Jalen Wilson is going to have to get his offensively. You're going to need an aggressive version of DeJuan Harris. The defense has to be sound. But in this particular matchup, how important is the versatility and creativity of Grady Dick going to play a role? How vital is that going to be to KU's potential success in this matchup?
Well, he's got to play differently than he did against Iowa State, where you think about Iowa State's defense, how good they are at forcing teams to turn the ball over. Grady turned it over, what was it? I think 5 times, a career high number. Like, you can't have that type of game from him in Stillwater and be able to get out with the win. So I look at this game and I say, can Grady Dick, in terms of his own ball handling and his possessions, can't he get the ball up? Like, that's what really is going to matter. Like, the passing, all right, whatever, but can he get 3-point shots up? And also, can he get to the rim and be able to finish there, where he mentioned some of the size that Oklahoma State has? I think the spacing element for him is going to be huge. Obviously, talk about driving the rim. Well, if all of a sudden Oklahoma State can pack the paint and have that type of rim protector on the inside, that's really hard to beat. And so I look at him and say, he's got to get back on the horse. And, I think he had 8 points against Oklahoma. I think this needs to be a double-digit game from him, because I just think that it's going to be so crucial to spacing the floor for everyone else.
Does KU get it done tonight?
I think so. I found an interesting stat that KU, I think, has only lost once or twice to Oklahoma State since they swept KU in 2018. It seems like Bill Self has kind of cracked him going back to his alma mater in Stillwater. It's a curse. It's bad. Seems like they've done pretty well. So I do think this is a game Kansas will win, but I think this is one of those coin flip ones where you look at the Big 12 and say, I wouldn't be shocked if Oklahoma State won, and I certainly wouldn't be shocked if KU won. I think we're at that point in the season, and Oklahoma State is playing that well, but I would probably pick KU to win this one.
Yeah, I've got the numbers right up in front of me right now. In fact, KU head-to-head with Oklahoma State. Yeah, KU's won each of the last 4 and has won, if I can do some math in my head real quick, I think 9 of the last 10 head-to-head against Oklahoma State. So whatever those issues have always been, KU has seemed to have figured it out at least a little bit. Are you down in Stillwater today, Michael, down at America's favorite wrestling gymnasium for this one?
I'm not. My car has been giving me issues, so I'm here trying to figure that out.
And well, lucky you, because they will sit you on the moon to watch the game, but that's maybe just my own personal issue. Final thing for you, Michael. Right now, is KU a 1 seed?
Yeah. I think the Big 12 should have 2 1 seeds, but let's not get into Purdue and their credentials. I think Houston is definitely one. I think Texas and KU should probably be it as well.
All right. So right now, and I know it's hard to play the prognostication bracketology game, but right now, how many 1s and how many 2s do you think the Big 12 has? And how close do you think Baylor is to getting onto that 1 line? Because they're playing as well as anybody right now.
Yeah, I think Baylor's close. I mean, the fascinating thing you got to look at here is Texas and Baylor are going to play in just a few weeks. So I think you're looking at probably Kansas probably being a 1. I think Texas, in my opinion, should be a 1. I probably won't happen, but I think that should happen. If not, that's a 2. And then I do think you're right. I think Baylor, they are going to play well. And I think they probably will end up having the resume of someone that should be on the 2 line. Obviously, you look at the wins and losses. If you play that game, it's going to look differently. But you have to keep in mind that Big 12 is just so far and away the best conference in college basketball that it should be rewarded for the tough schedule that these teams are playing.
Fog.net is far and away the best place to find all the best coverage of KU athletics. Head to fog.net. It's part of the 24/7 Sports Network. If you're not a VIP, would absolutely recommend it. They've got tons of great deals all the time, by the way. If you want to sign up for VIP, get access to the boards and all of that. You can find Michael on Twitter at mswain247, and he joins us every single Tuesday, bottom of the 4 o'clock hour for Jayhawk Weekly, brought to you by 23rd Street Brewery. Michael, best of luck with the car troubles. Enjoy the game tonight, and we'll talk to you coming up next week.
Thanks. I appreciate it. We'll talk to you then.
That is Michael Swain from fog.net. Tremendous stuff, as always. By the way, latest bracketology from ESPN, if you care about such a thing. Right now, Joe Lunardi has 8 Big 12 teams in the field. KU is a 1. Texas and Baylor are 2 seeds. K-State a 3. Iowa State a 4. He's got TCU as a 6. Oklahoma State an 8. West Virginia still in as a 10.
I think that sounds correct. Like, objectively, I think that's right.
I agree. We'll talk more basketball and so much more in general coming up in the 5 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk. hour left on 580 Sports Talk on this Valentine's Day 2023. Thank you so much for joining us. Brendan Dworzynski and Dan Lucero here with you. Appreciate you spending some of your afternoons with us. And if you've missed any of the show so far, head to our website, 580wibw.com. Hover over the podcast tab and then click on 580 Sports Talk, and that's where you'll find the hour-by-hour breakdown of the show, including our conversation with Michael Swain from last hour, Random Question Tuesday from hour number 1, our chat about Andy Reid's place in NFL history, and so much more. Again, that's at our website under the podcasts tab on 580wibw.com. We will get to our 580 Sports Talk headlines here in just a moment. We will also preview the college hoops coming up tonight, KU versus Oklahoma State and K-State versus Oklahoma. Big games for both parties for very different reasons. We'll preview those coming up in a little bit. We'd love your predictions for the games, your thoughts about the games, and really just your thoughts on anything we're talking about on the show. On the Big O Tires text line, 785-272-9429 is the text line number, and the comment section is open on YouTube as well. Sports on 580 WIBW is the YouTube channel. Hop on in. Let us know your thoughts on whatever we are talking about on the show today. Let's get to our 580 Sports Talk headlines brought to you by Blue Dot of Kansas and the Blue Dot Peak Performance Safety Check. When they will check your furnace, your AC, and your plumbing all once a year, all for just one low price. Plenty of other deals and offers available to you from Blue Dot. So go check them out online at bluedotkansas.com. First headline for me today, we've got another pair of coaching hires that have been made official. The new head coach of the Indianapolis Colts is Shane Steichen, the previously offensive coordinator of the Philadelphia Eagles. The Arizona Cardinals have also made their hire. They are hiring Jonathan Gannon, the defensive coordinator of the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles become the first team since 1994, the 49ers, to lose, or was it 94? No, I'm sorry.
The last team to have both of their coordinators replaced after a Super Bowl appearance was 2016. That was when the Atlanta Falcons lost to the New England Patriots. Kyle Shanahan left to become the head coach in San Francisco. And I forget the name of their defensive coordinator because nobody hired him to be their head coach. He just got fired as the DC and then got a job somewhere else. Robert Smith, I think.
The same one? That Robert Smith?
No, not the
Certainly
running back.
not.
No.
Atlanta Falcons 2016. I can tell you that their defensive coordinator was, doesn't pull up right here. All right, here we go. Defensive coordinator for the Atlanta Falcons that year, Richard Smith, who is currently the linebackers coach for the Colts. After he was a DC for the Falcons, he was an assistant for the Chargers for a few years. Right. He's kind of bounced around since.
Yeah, but that's a little different. They parted company with Richard Smith after they blew a 28-3 lead in the Super Bowl. And then, Kyle Shanahan left to go be a head coach somewhere else. So they might be the first team in longer than that to have both of their coordinators hired to be head coaches by other teams.
Yes. So that was the fact I was looking for. This is from NFL Research and also Andrew Siciliano. The Eagles are the first Super Bowl team to lose both coordinators to head coaching jobs since 1994. Can you name those coordinators?
1994. So that would have been the 49ers.
That was the 49ers.
Offensive coordinator Mike Shanahan.
Correct. He ended up the head coach for the Broncos.
Defensive coordinator. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to give you that. Ray Rhodes?
The incomparable Ray Rhodes. Well done.
Let's go.
Very, very well done. Ray Rhodes stunk. He was not a good coach.
He's not a good head coach.
Not a good head coach. He coached the Eagles, then coached the Packers. And the Packers probably could have hired Andy Reid instead. They chose Ray Rhodes.
And then they did hire, the Eagles got it right eventually.
Yes, the Eagles eventually got it right. Those wish it had gone another way, but that's beside the point. We can move on. So Shane Steichen going to the Colts, I think that makes a lot of sense. They are in a Weird spot. I don't think there's any denying that. They're almost certainly going to take a quarterback with one of their picks in the first round.
Jim Irsay is openly and loudly talking about doing that.
Which
one he likes.
I saw someone today
It's
said
Bryce Young.
This has to be a smokescreen because there's no way you would do this without having some sort of agenda. To which I thought, have you ever heard of Jim Irsay before?
Right.
Do you know anything about the owner of the Indianapolis Colts? He does a lot of things without having an agenda.
Yeah, doesn't that really have a filter?
I think that hire makes sense, though. There's sensibility behind it.
Sure. Yeah,
Jonathan Gannon to the Cardinals, less so.
Yeah, that's the one that, we can say it now. We can say it, and we were kind of whispering it because it felt a little homery to point it out in the 2 weeks leading up to the Super Bowl. And now that it's been borne out, we can point at Jonathan Gannon's defense. And Matt Verderam was the first one to say this on these airwaves, say it in the week leading up to the Super Bowl. Every time Jonathan Gannon's defense has played a good offense, it has gotten destroyed. And they didn't play a lot of good offenses in 2022, but the ones they did play wrecked them, like the Chiefs, gaining 221 of a possible 230 yards in the second half and rallying back from 10 to win the Super Bowl. So I do have some questions about Jonathan Gannon's ability as a coach and fitness to be a head coach.
I saw something from an Eagles fan today that said they believed Gannon would be a better head coach than defensive coordinator, which received pushback. And I thought, how does that make sense? And the argument was schematically, his stuff is very flawed. And that is why the Eagles got torn apart in the second half by the Chiefs offense. The reason why he thought he would still be a good head coach is guys gravitate toward him. He was spoken very highly of by Eagles players offensively and certainly defensively. And apparently he's well connected. I guess that was a selling point when he was interviewing with various teams, is that the group he is planning to bring in as his assistants is pretty impressive. So that's why they thought he might be better in a role where he doesn't have to be the final voice of every play that goes out defensively, and he can use his leadership skills to help out. Whether that actually gets fleshed out or not, I don't know. Arizona clearly needs someone who is a more mature voice in that room than Cliff Kingsbury and even their quarterback, Kyler Murray. Maybe it works for Gannon in that regard. Maybe he finds the next big thing for his coordinators. I don't know. I would not have made that hire. And best of luck to him. I'm not rooting against him by any means. I don't care. I hope it works out well for him, but it doesn't really mean anything to me one way or the other. I just would not have made that hire. I think between the two guys who were reportedly the final candidates for that job, either Jonathan Gannon or Lou Anarumo, I would have hired the Cincinnati defensive coordinator, Anarumo.
Yeah, because I know his stuff works.
Yes. We've got proof. We've got multiple years of proof.
Yeah. I am a little surprised if there was a coach that I thought was going to get a head coaching job in this cycle that didn't get it. Lou Anarumo is definitely that guy. And the Bengals should be counting their blessings that they get to hang on to him for another year. Oh, and I thought Eric Bieniemy might get a head coaching job, but then I remembered, oh, right.
Look, I understand, and I'm going to try to walk the line finally here. I understand that talking about the race element of it makes people uncomfortable. And this year, you can point to, well, D'Amico Ryans got hired. D'Amico Ryans is the black guy, and I understand that. Hell, if anyone's been proactive about that, it's been the Houston Texans. They've hired, 3 coaches in 3 years, but last 3 have all been black guys. I understand that a lot of people don't like to talk about that and would rather talk about credentials or talk about a unfortunately sordid past back when he was in college for Eric Bieniemy and even some things when he was a coach, an assistant coach at Colorado in the early 2000s. I understand all of that. I do. I understand people don't like to talk about it. I also understand that there's really no way around it at this point, and it's been well documented that is a problem in NFL coaching circles. But at this point, I really don't know how you can even make an argument that he doesn't deserve to get a chance when so many guys who are less qualified have gotten chances. Like Shane Steichen, I think is a good hire. I think that hire makes sense. There's not an argument, though, that Shane Steichen's resume is better than Eric Bieniemy's. And
it's also very funny that the Colts, fresh off of hiring the Eagles offensive coordinator to be their head coach and getting middling results and deciding that wasn't good enough, have now done the exact same thing.
And hired, the Eagles offensive coordinator. We will find out about those results. And I don't think you can even make the argument that, well, he's got to go somewhere else and he's got to call plays. You know, a great, very famous example of a current NFL head coach who didn't call plays as a coordinator before getting a job? Andy Reid, one of the most ingenious offensive minds in the history of organized gridiron football, was never a play caller in his entire career before he got to Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if that's not a selling point, I just, like, I don't want to just say, well, it's obviously never going to happen. Something is wrong. It just is so confusing as to why.
Every argument is so tired. The argument that Eric Bieniemy doesn't call the plays. What's he doing? Is he just fetching water? Like, what do you think it is that he's doing?
John Harbaugh didn't call plays.
Chiefs players and coaches alike went out of their way in the aftermath of this Super Bowl victory to point out that it was Eric Bieniemy who spotted on tape the coverage flaw in the Eagles defending short motion and fake motion and helped them to scheme up the two plays that ended up being touchdown plays to wide open wide receivers in the second half. Andy Reid and the players gave Eric Bieniemy credit for spotting that tendency and helping install the play that we all now know famously as corn dog. Like, that's an Eric Bieniemy production right there.
Yeah. Because
he didn't speak it into the headset, we dock him for that. Like, it's just, we keep moving the goalposts when it comes to Eric Bieniemy. Like, and I think that we do it because we hope that there is another reason that somebody who has paid his dues, who has proven to be qualified, who has longed for the opportunity to be a head coach. We would like to think that there's something else standing in his way other than he's black and the league doesn't like to hire black head coaches historically. But sometimes what is it? Occam's razor, the simplest solution is often the one that's correct. Like, I'm to the point where I'm applying Occam's razor to the Eric Bieniemy thing. Like, that's why he hasn't gotten the job, a real opportunity, because everything we say is, well, he doesn't interview well. Yeah, but he keeps getting interviewed. Do you not think that people in the league talk? That people around the league would say, hey, man, like, find somebody else to fulfill your Rooney Rule fulfillment because this guy interviews, he's a total disaster. No, he gets interviews every cycle, every year. Some teams have interviewed him twice.
You know who famously, and this isn't a pro coach, this was a college coach. You know who famously was a terrible interview? Bud Foster. Bud Foster was the defensive coordinator for Frank Beamer for forever at Virginia Tech. And he was a damn good one, too. That's one of the best defensive coaches in college football in decades. He was a great, great coach. Really as much a part of their success as Beamer was. He was a famously awful interview because he had, earlier in his tenure at VT, he had multiple head coach interviews. And the rumor was always that he walked in and it just was a disaster from the beginning. So eventually he stopped getting interviews. He just hung out with his, metal lunch pail at Virginia Tech and coordinated top 10 defenses every year. Like, he just kind of settled into that. So, like, if that was the case, then why would he still, and I know the NFL has a Rooney Rule, college doesn't. I understand that part of it, but
yeah.
Like, there are other black assistants.
Yes.
Right?
Like, yeah, if this guy was such a waste of your time because he's such an abominable interview that he can't interview well enough to get a head coaching job, then why does he keep getting the interviews? Why does he keep getting those opportunities? If it's, well, he's Andy Reid's offensive coordinator. So it's really not him. It's mostly Andy Reid. It didn't keep Matt Nagy from getting a head coaching job. Well, Matt Nagy wasn't a very good head coach. Well, it didn't keep Doug Peterson from getting a head coaching job. Is he a good head coach? I ain't pretty damn good. So it is. It's just you keep moving the goalposts, and everything negative you say about Eric Bieniemy. The one thing I give any kind of weight to is, yes, when he was in college, he had a rap sheet. He did. He had some very unfortunate off the field incidents when he was a college student. Stuff is 30 years ago. You don't give anybody grace to think, hey, maybe they've grown and matured. And Bieniemy said all the right things publicly about the mistakes that he's made, which include a DUI in 2001. That's the last thing on what you would call his rap sheet. And if you wonder how much teams care about DUI, Todd Downing's about to get another job. That's the offensive coordinator formerly of the Tennessee Titans who got a DUI like 2 months ago.
Yeah.
And now the Jets are going to hire him. So they don't care about that stuff. Like, but even if they did, like, this is 20 years ago, and we're holding this against him. The University of Colorado didn't hold it against him. If he did all those things when he was a player in Boulder, and man, he just got a bad reputation in Boulder. They hired him not once, but twice as an offensive assistant, and they wanted to hire him as their head coach. They were going to consider him as a head coach until he took his name out of that hat because he wants to be an NFL head coach. It's just, that's the part that's frustrating. Maybe it never happens for him. There are lots of great black assistant coaches who this never happened for, like Sherman Lewis. Mm-hmm. Sherman Lewis is a great example of a guy who eminently qualified, just never got the chance. And unfortunately, it happens way more often for eminently qualified black assistant coaches than it does for barely qualified white assistant coaches.
And
if Joe Judge had been Jermaine Judge, he never would have gotten a sniff.
It just doesn't. Again, I just don't think you can explain away like the qualifications. I don't. And if you want to make an argument, I'm willing to hear it. But I mean, he's been the offensive coordinator for 2 Super Bowl winning teams. I like Matt LaFleur as a coach. I do. Matt LaFleur didn't sniff winning a Super Bowl as a play calling offensive coordinator or as a coordinator on his own. The one year he called plays before the Packers hired him, called plays for a very mediocre Titans team. Like, and again, I like him. I think he's a good coach. That part of it doesn't affect whether you're a good coach or a bad coach or whatever. But there's just, I think we are out of arguments as to why it has not happened yet, because a lot of guys with worse resumes clearly have gotten
jobs. And that's why I default to Occam's razor. And it's an uncomfortable reality that we kind of have to sit with and think that, hey, maybe that's the reason. Maybe that is the reason. The reason is as simple as the color of his skin. But I think that's where we're at with him. I think and he wouldn't be the first one. And unless attitudes change, he probably won't be the last.
Any big headlines for you today?
Yeah, let's keep it moving on the Blue Dot of Kansas headlines. Derek Carr is no longer a Las Vegas Raider. At the buzzer, the Raiders released Carr today to avoid owing him the $40 million on his contract for 2023. Carr is now a free agent and free to explore contracts with other teams. There had been some noise that maybe the Raiders were going to be able to work out a trade, but Carr had a no-trade clause and told the Raiders he would not accept a trade anywhere. So the Raiders get nothing
for him.
Derek Carr. Yes, good for Derek Carr. 100% good for Derek Carr.
You're going to make me look like a clown at the end of the season. Have fun eating this cash.
The Saints appear to be the leader in the clubhouse. That's the team that has been most prominently publicly connected to Derek Carr. I think that makes a certain amount of sense. Obviously, the Saints are a bit of they're going in the wrong direction talent-wise. And with a guy like Carr, at the very least, you have some stability at the quarterback position, which the Saints haven't really had the last couple of years. More interestingly, I think to us as people who follow the AFC West with great interest, who do we think is quarterback in the Raiders in 2023? Because my pet theory was it was going to be Tom Brady. And that doesn't look like that's happening. He's filed the retirement paper. It looked like he might be really done. Word to Law and Order.
Nice.
Thank you.
Well done.
Who's going to quarterback the Raiders in 2023? Do they really think Jarrett Stidham is an NFL starting quarterback, or do you think they're going to be aggressive in the draft?
I think they're going to get Aaron Rodgers.
You think that's where Aaron Rodgers is?
All right, that's where he ends up. That move today not only avoided $40 million guaranteed for Derek Carr, it freed up $29+ million in cap space. They can make it happen. Rodgers has already said during his interviews with Pat McAfee, he knows his contract's going to get reworked one way or the other. That's going to happen wherever he ends up. You know Devontae Adams is pushing for it, and he's got some real pull there. I think that's what they do. I don't know that a Josh McDaniels, Aaron Rodgers relationship is going to ever last more than about the first meeting between the two of them, but that feels like the one that makes the most sense. Mark Davis wanting to go out on a limb, do something bold. That's very Raiders. Now, the Raiders will have to deal with the situation of, do they have enough liquid cash to pay the money that Aaron Rodgers is owed up front? That is the business side of the Raiders that is very funny and also a very real obstacle.
Yes, a legitimate question we would not be asking of the other 31 NFL franchises. This, to me, is the bigger question when it comes to Rodgers and the Raiders. I don't think he and Josh McDaniels can coexist. I don't think that works at all.
It's a bad, on paper, that is a bad fit. I do not know how it would work. it feels like football fit-wise, though, that's the one that makes the most
Josh
sense.
McDaniels ended up in a power struggle with Derek Carr, who by all accounts is a terrific teammate.
Every teammate Derek Carr has ever had loves Derek Carr.
And a pretty super guy, whatever you think of him as a quarterback. Everybody will tell you he's a great guy and a great teammate. And Josh McDaniels turned what had been a pretty stable quarterbacking situation into a power struggle by the middle of the season. And Josh McDaniels doesn't lose those. He's got too much power. Like, how is he? I can't see their egos fitting into the same room.
That's fair.
I don't see that making sense. I still think the landing spot for Rodgers is going to be New York.
Here is the issue, I think, with New York. And I saw someone bring this up from around the NFL today, and I think it's an interesting point. Is New York in a position where they can take the risk to not get a quarterback? This was brought up. I want to say, I got to go find where this quote is from, but it was one of the members of the Around the NFL team at NFL.com and the Around the NFL podcast who said that if you're New York, if you want to go get Derek Carr, for example, you do not have to wait. When free agency starts on March 15th, that is when, all the deals get worked out the couple days before that, but that is when you can officially sign guys. If you don't get Aaron Rodgers or you don't get insert quarterback here who you want, who you think can get you to the playoffs and maybe beyond, you're stuck. You are stuck with Joe Flacco next year and Zach Wilson. That's your quarterback room because Mike White's a free agent.
Yeah, and they're too good on defense. And they've got like Breece Hall coming back off the injury.
A really good group of young receivers.
Garrett Wilson, offensive rookie of the year. Like that is a team that really, truly feels a quarterback away.
And by getting cut today, Derek Carr does not have to wait for a contract to expire to become a free agent. He, as of, I think it was 3:00 today, he is free to sign anywhere. If he had wanted to sign at 3:01 with someone, he could have done that today. I think it almost makes more sense for the Jets, and we know that they've reached out about Rodgers. I think it makes more sense for them to go after Carr because is the ceiling lower? Absolutely. Absolutely the ceiling is lower. But you don't need a super high ceiling quarterback to get to the playoffs with that roster. Theoretically, if they repeat what they did this year with the other parts of their game.
But if Aaron Rodgers could still play at the top of his game, he could win it, make a run at a Super Bowl.
True. Don't have to give up any picks, though. It's an interesting situation. I think that the Jets and the Raiders and really the Bucks are the most interesting quarterback situation. I have no idea what Tampa's going to do. And also, honest to God, if you are a free agent quarterback, especially one that's like a higher level of free agent, so I'm specifically, thinking about like a Rodgers or a Carr, you want to go follow Tom Brady?
Right.
I would not. Derek Carr's already been picked on by most people his whole career. Rodgers ain't going to do that.
These dudes could win with the GOAT under center. How am I supposed to make it work?
Right.
Alternately, you could look at it as, hey, these dudes could win with the GOAT under center, but wait till they get a load of me, Derek Carr.
Man, those Tampa Bay fans will go back to being Patriots fans so fast. You'll not be able to blink. Real quick, want to get to these before we get to a commercial break. 2 comments in here from Matt in the YouTube comment section. Appreciate you guys jumping in the YouTube comments and on the Big O Tires text line. One, in regard to the coaching situation, general point that is absolutely correct, and this is true in all coaching circles. It's the good old boy system. Yup. Having connections and just looking like everyone else, that always helps. Also, Matt asks, if Rodgers does get traded, does that mean Jordan Love starting in Green Bay? Yes. I'm not going to get too far into this because we're up against a break, and I don't want to make this a Packers show. I have gotten more and more intrigued by the notion if the Packers do trade with the Raiders for Rodgers and end up with the 7th overall pick. If Young or Stroud fell to that point,
okay,
I would be extremely interested in testing those waters. I think Jordan Love could be good, but those 2 dudes look pretty darn good too.
I was scared that I was going to hear the words, I could talk myself into Will Levis come out of your mouth.
I will not ever talk myself into Will Levis.
See, I sit next to you.
I'm not that desperate.
I sit next to you during the day, so I know that's a fact, but I wondered maybe if after hours you had maybe done some tape eating and decided that actually Will Levis is him.
God, look at this torque. Look at that rotation. The big arm. Oh, my God. Absolutely not. That does it for our 580 Sports Talk headlines. As always, they are brought to you by Blue Dot of Kansas, whom you can visit online at blue.kansas.com. We're talking college hoops coming up next. KU takes on Oklahoma State tonight. K-State is down in Norman. We'll preview both games after this on 580 Sports Talk. Busy night of college hoops coming up here in the Sunflower State. Incredibly stupid scheduling by the Big 12 to put KU and K-State and both Oklahoma schools playing on the same night at the same time. You know, you made that point earlier that it's both Oklahoma schools too. This is so stupid. Yeah. This is dumb. Who do I talk to about this? I'm going to blame Bowlesby.
Yes. Yeah. Brett Yormark's hands are clean of this one.
What do you think Bob Bowlesby's up to? Like, when he heard Gonzaga and Big 12 in the same sentence, do you think he, felt heart palpitations?
I think he was probably like, wow, that's crazy, and went back to doing whatever it is that retired people do all day.
Staring at a wall.
You think Bowlesby plays golf? I bet he plays golf.
The slowest round you've ever seen.
Just a workman-like 88.
God. Do not miss Bob Bowlesby's leadership of the Big 12. Who you want to start with tonight?
Let's start with the Cats.
All right, let's do it. K-State needs a win. I think this is sort of just, you need to see a win on the scoreboard just to kind of feel confident again. K-State has obviously been struggling over the last couple of weeks in Big 12 play. We talked about this earlier. We've only had 2 days of the week so far. So yesterday, that some of the reactions about Marquise Noel in particular, but just about K-State in general on social media have been kind of intense and kind of over the top, I think, and just
I would agree.
Angry.
Yes.
Look, K-State has not played its best basketball as of late.
Four straight road losses.
And in their last 5 conference games, they're 1-4 with a win against Florida from the SEC in there, which is a quad 1 win. So are they quad 2 now? I actually don't know. It's a decent win regardless. That is not great. It is the toughest conference in college basketball. I'm not so far on the one side as, we should just be happy that K-State is competitive and look how much better they are. They're a tournament team, yada. I'm not that far on that side. I also don't think you need to completely lose your mind over where K-State is. But I think this is a big game just morale-wise. Oklahoma's not good. They just don't have guys. Sherfield's a nice player. I'd like him a lot more if he was your number 2 or certainly your number 3 option. Because Tanner Groves ain't it. Like, he's a fine player. At Eastern Washington, he was a stud. He'd probably be a really good player at, like, an American school. Like, you put him at Wichita State, he's probably their best player, although they're like that level, he's probably a pretty good player. He just doesn't have the athleticism.
Yeah, I don't think he's a great Big 12 player
No.
either. They got some freshmen I really like. I think it's Jaden Hill.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, I like Jaden Hill a lot.
You can see it there. Yeah.
Like, they got some young guys that look like they could be really good, but they are young. And when you're a young team in this league, you end up taking your lumps. And that's what Oklahoma is kind of going through as a group this year. They're playing right now on current form. They're probably the worst team in the conference. I still can't believe they smoked Alabama 3 weeks ago. And
that is the college basketball version of the Colts beating the Chiefs this year.
That's a fact.
Like, how in the world did this happen?
So tangibly and intangibly, these are the keys for Kansas State. Intangibly, it's about being the desperate team, being the team with the chip on your shoulder. I think Kansas State was that when the season began, and they were that entering Big 12 play. And then they ripped off a bunch of wins early on, and they were sitting atop the conference. And I think they lost that chip a little bit. They lost a bit of that underdog mentality. They were no longer the desperate team or the hungrier team in their games. And I think Jerome Tang realized that, and it's not something unique to Kansas State or this group of players. I think that's just how human nature works, is that you get a little fat and happy off your own success. And I think that's happened to Kansas State a little bit, where they have not maybe had that chip on their shoulder, that extra edge competitively. Now they should have it. I think they should be the hungrier team, the more desperate team tonight in Norman. The other tangible thing is take care of the basketball. Just take care of the basketball.
Yeah.
It's like 13 turnovers a game when they win, 18 when they lose.
Yep.
I think it's the differential. And for Marquise Noel in particular, it starts with seeing one go through the basket early and not feeling like you have to make every play a spectacular play. I think he's out overcompensating a little bit for the fact that scoring has gotten harder for him in recent weeks. And so he's trying to, like, he's an unselfish player by nature. And he's already got the single season assist record at K-State. So he's having a wonderful, wonderful season. But I think of late, especially, he has tried to make the spectacular play where the routine one will do. So I think for him, it's just a matter of taking a breath, making an open shot, making the easy pass, and getting back to the things that he was doing well early in the season. He's certainly capable. And when he does, Kansas State is going to start ripping off some wins again.
I got interrupted momentarily while you were talking about that because Patrick Mahomes has responded to Juju Valentine Gate.
Oh, boy.
And just tweeted, "That man must just be bored," at A.J. Brown. Very funny.
Which man? Juju or AJ?
I imagine AJ Brown. I can't imagine he'd say that about his guy Juju. That's very funny. But to your point, yeah, I mean, all you have to do is value the ball and get an average game from Marquise Noel and Keontae Johnson offensively. And I think K-State's going to win this game. I would not be too worried about that.
Yeah, they got D+ games from both guys in Texas at Lubbock, still almost won. And if they get like you said, they get C+ games tonight in Norman, they should win.
By the way, have you seen the rumors about Porter Moser?
Been hearing that he might have some interest from the folks in South Bend.
Yes, that is the rumor. So he's the Chicago guy. He's from Naperville. Same with Nicky Lopez. Maybe they know each other. Probably not. He's from the Chicago suburbs. Coached, obviously, and found his most success at Loyola Chicago. Was tremendous with Loyola Chicago. I thought when he got hired, Oklahoma was a good fit for the kind of style of basketball he likes to play and with the level of pressure and all that. Obviously, this year's not gone well. They just barely missed the tournament in his first year last year. Notre Dame comes calling. He's a very religious guy, very Catholic guy. That obviously has a pull. We know that for a fact. That is interesting. But then Mike Brey said he's not retiring. Who knows if that is actually going to be true, because we've had a report on both sides of that so far. I find that surprising, but also if he got offered the job, I think he would take it. I think he would leave OU if Notre Dame offered him the job, given those other factors.
I do too. It'd be a hard job I mean, they're going to be able to throw more money at him than Oklahoma is.
Yeah. Easier conference, too. We talked about this the other day. The bottom of the ACC is garbage. Absolute dreck. Yuck.
For anyone who is interested in what our friends in the desert think about tonight's K-State-Oklahoma game, right now, Kansas State, per FanDuel's odds, is a 1.5 underdog. And plus 106 on the money line. The total is 141.5. Personally, I am 0-2 this year when betting K-State money line as an underdog, so I should stay away from that one, per the advice of anyone who loves K-State.
I like K-State in this game. I do think the Cats get it done. KU is in Stillwater, place that has been difficult for KU to win recently, but as Michael Swain gave us the stat earlier, KU's won 9 of its last 10 head-to-head with Oklahoma State ever since getting swept by the Pokes a couple of years ago. That was the 2018 season. Oklahoma State's playing really well. They are the hottest team in the Big 12 right now, and thus, by that virtue, one of the hottest teams in the entire country. Caleb Boone has become their number one. He is their alpha dog. They've got some nice pieces around. He's the only one that I really think of as like, wow, that guy scares me. Although, who's to say, you had that stat earlier. They are so good.
7-1 in the conference when he plays. And he's not a big scorer. He just alters how you score yourself. Oklahoma State, we were looking at the KenPom metrics earlier. They're 120th in adjusted offense. They're 5th in adjusted defense. And they missed Cisse for a chunk of games this season. Like, they make it hard on you to score. They are not fun to play against. And so for Kansas, this feels like a make or miss game for them.
Yeah.
Like, if they could take the lid off from behind the arc and they get Grady Dick going, or Jalen Wilson hits a few threes, DeJuan Harris hits 1 or 2 from behind the arc, they get one maybe from McCullough, they get one maybe from Yesufu, 7 or 8 threes. I think they're going to need a lot of scoring from the arc and from the mid-range, because scoring at the rim is just tough against Oklahoma State. It's really, really difficult.
I brought this up to Michael earlier. It feels like a Grady Dick kind of game. Got to be able to hit some shots from the outside.
Yeah, they need to. They got to run him off the screens, and he's going to be, I think, really important to what it is that they do. They're going to have to run a lot of screen action. What they'd love to do is get Cisse out of the paint.
Yeah,
like if there are ways that they can convince him to come out and guard or switch on. I think there are going to be a lot of high screen and roll in this game.
I would imagine
a lot of high screen and roll. But the problem with K-State's bigs, though, is you really don't have to respect the pick and pop. Yeah. So like you don't have to, like, Adams can make the 15-footer, but you don't have to guard it.
Yeah,
like you're fine.
If you're willing to let that happen.
Yeah, you're fine if he takes a 15-footer. So I don't know. We haven't seen a lot of real small ball lineups for like Jalen Wilson at the 5 for K-State or for KU. And I don't think this is going to be a game where we see it, but this doesn't feel like a time for Bill Self to get real experimental on us. But this is a tough matchup. This is a really good Oklahoma State team at home. And my thought is that every Big 12 contender right now has the margin of error of 5 losses. Because I think 5 losses is going to end up being the number that wins this league. I won't be surprised if it's a 6-car pile up at 12-6.
Yeah.
But 5 losses feels like the most you can lose. This might be where KU spends its margin of error tonight. This is going to be a hard one for them.
If they can get it, though, get that 3rd straight win, beat a tough team with a great defense, I think you're going to see a lot more national public momentum behind KU as one of your top seeds in the NCAA tournament. I really think that's coming if they win tonight. Don't forget, you'll be able to hear the K-State game tonight right here on 580 WIBW. Pregame begins at 7, tip at 8 o'clock down in Norman between K-State and Oklahoma. Let's take a timeout. When we come back, one of the new rules for Major League Baseball this year, well, we found out today what it might look like, at least a little bit, in practice. We'll talk about it next on 580 Sports Talk. lot of time yesterday on 580 Sports Talk talking about the new rules for Major League Baseball, the permanent runner on second base to start extra innings, the nonsense about, well, there's a lot of nonsense that's out there. Today, we found out there are going to be more balks possibly being called. Jesse Rogers of ESPN reported that.
The disengagement rule, you can only disengage from the rubber twice per at bat. And so then if you try and pick off the runner, unless you pick them off successfully, it's a balk.
This is an honest question. Were we missing stolen bases that much?
Yes. Like,
okay.
I think in a sense, like the intention of this particular rule is let's get a little bit more action on the base paths, because it used, I mean, you go back, you look at the numbers in like the 80s and the 90s, guys were stealing 100 bags, 80 bags. I think the league leader in the American League last year had 43.
Yeah.
Like, these guys don't steal bases like they used to. And the main reason is, and I mean, this is not new philosophy. Earl Weaver used to talk about, you know, wait for the 3-run home run. That's the best offense. Stay on those bases and wait for us to bring you home with a long ball. And as the home run became more part of the game, it made less sense to steal. But also, as analytics, sabermetrics, whatever you want to call them, entered the game, teams kind of found the break-even point between where you're actually adding value with a stolen base and where you're not. And the break-even point is somewhere around 73 to 75%. Where if you're stealing bases at a 75% clip, you're adding value with your base stealing. You're adding runs over the course of the 162 games. And if you can't steal bases that well, then you're not adding runs. Well, most guys can't steal bases at 75% clip. So teams just kind of stop doing it altogether. This should theoretically give base runners a better chance to get a better jump. Now, catcher's still going to be able to throw guys out, and pitchers can still pick off. They just have to be sure they're going to pick the guy off.
Yeah.
So it will encourage bigger leads, certainly, and more daring on the base paths. And the other rule that you want to talk about may also encourage base stealing.
So we already knew this a while back, but we got our first visual evidence today of the new bases they are going to use. Instead of being 15 inches, they are now 18-inch bases. The thought, at least the public justification, is it's going to be safer, specifically at first base.
Yes.
And that is probably true, because there are a lot of injuries every year with a guy stepping on someone else's foot or colliding at first base, what have you. So there's probably reality behind that.
Functionally ended Ryan Howard's career.
Yes.
I mean,
it absolutely did.
So you go way back for that, but like Troy Tulowitzki suffered an injury, not quite of the same severity, but he rolled an ankle on first base, never really recovered from it, and that can be a tough injury.
So I understand that, and also the bases are now going to be a little bit closer because
bigger means you're closer.
Yeah. So first base obviously has to stay on the first base line. It has to stay on the foul line. So it's going to extend into play a little bit more. Second base is staying where it is, but it's going to grow out a little bit, so to speak. And then third base, same as first. So that is a few inches shorter between bases in every single direction. So in theory, a bang bang play that wasn't out in recent years might be safe now because you had 3 fewer inches to go.
This is the rule change of all of them that I hate the least, because I think it'll be like the least noticeable.
I agree.
Really have the least negative impact and the most positive impact. But again, gosh, I know I yelled about this all day yesterday. You're trying to fix something that isn't broken. Baseball is still really popular in lots of places. Like, okay, people don't watch the World Series like they used to. I get that. I understand the TV ratings are different. The game does not hold the same place in American culture that it did in the 60s and the 70s. There's part of me that is sad about that, and I didn't even live through that period of time. But you know where baseball's popular? It's popular in New York, where the Yankees are always good. It's popular in Boston, where the Red Sox are always good. It's popular in Los Angeles, when the Dodgers are really good. You know where it's super popular right now, where they're selling a bunch of tickets? San Diego.
Yeah.
Where they're trying their damnedest to win a World Series. The solution for owners who wonder why their product isn't more popular, why they're not selling as many tickets, not selling as much merchandise, not getting revenue in that way, try to win and get your product in front of your consumer, like on television and stuff. Like, those would be 2 real easy solutions that don't change how the game is played. That's just on you to make your product better and more accessible.
When the Cubs were entering their golden era a few years back, I saw Rizzo and Bryant jerseys on every kid I saw.
Chicago is a great
happened.
baseball city.
Yeah.
And you know what else is a great baseball city? Kansas City.
Put the effort into having a good product, and you will have people who are interested regardless of how big the bases are. By the way, do you know who led the majors in stolen bases last year?
It was John Birdie, wasn't it, for Miami?
It was. He only played 102 games, only batted 240, and led the majors in stolen bases with 41. Here's a fun fact about John Birdie. I had literally never heard that name until right now. I didn't watch any Marlins baseball last year. Even when they played the Cubs, I probably didn't watch it. I did not know who John Birdie was. That is brand new to me. The guys after him, Jorge Mateo, Cedric Mullins, Randy Arozarena, knew them. John Birdie could have made up that name. MLB.com could be lying to me for all I know. We've got to take one more break. The final word is next. Wrapping up 580 Sports Talk with the final word. By the way, real fast, because we haven't talked about this one bit, understandably, the Chiefs just won the Super Bowl. We were talking about baseball last segment. Pitchers and catchers for the Royals report tomorrow.
Yeah.
Spring training begins tomorrow. That is one. What's your final word?
Final word for me, Andy Reid, all-time great head coach for two reasons. Number one, his ability to adapt to the era in which he is coaching. And number two, his ability to relate to all different kinds of players and personalities. It's a rare trait to be so adaptable, and Andy Reid has done it and remained lovable and remained a winner. And now he's a two-time Super Bowl champion, and I can't wait to see him get into Kansas someday.
Final word for me is I've got a Kansas sweep tonight, a Sunflower State sweep. KU, I think, gets the job done down in Stillwater. It should be a close game. I think KU wins by just one basket. I think it'll be tough. Oklahoma State's playing really well, but I do like to tear the Jayhawks around right now for the last five. Give me KU there. And I think K-State gets that game that they really need. I think they'll bounce back, and I think the two superstars, specifically both Noel and Johnson, are going to play better. All you got to do to win this game, don't give the ball away a ton. K-State's going to be just fine. Coming up tomorrow on 580 Sports Talk, we'll have our high school athletes of the week. Tim Fitzgerald will join us to talk all things K-State and to recap tonight's game and so much more. That's tomorrow from 3 to 6. For Dan Lucero, I'm Brendan Brzezinski. See you then on 580 Sports Talk.